that we have enough time, because this part is also a little bit long, but it's more dynamic than the first one. The first one's got a lot of texts and some theology in there. This one is more practical. Let us start with a word of prayer. Beloved Father in heaven, we thank you very much for all you do for us, for the privilege we have to be here with your children. Father, I ask and invite the presence of your Holy Spirit with us, your blessings and guidance, your inspiration and your protection. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, friends, so we are back to our war, the war of the senses. Now, I don't know if this will be like this, but it's probably, oh yeah, it does. So I'd rather have it this side, because I'll go with the last finger, left hand. So we're going to talk about the history of rock and roll. And rock and roll has influenced all of our cultures. Basically, everybody here was somehow influenced by rock and roll. Either it was in our youth days or upbringing, it has affected. In the previous part, we spoke about the rhythmic orientation of pagan nations and the more melodic orientation of Israel. It doesn't mean that Israel was not joyful and rhythmic also, but the worship was more melodic than rhythmic, while the pagan nations had a more rhythmic worship, and we will see what difference it makes. So we went a little bit with Israel until the beginning of the church. Now we are going to start in the Middle Ages, okay? That people usually call the Dark Ages. A phenomenon was happening in parallel. So on this side, I'm going to put what happens in the world, and on this side, I'm going to put what happens with music in the melodic trend, okay? So in the melodic trend, we have Pope Gregory wanting to bring a revival, and he's thinking, and this is a very important hint, he's thinking melody is the spiritual part. So he decided to take away harmony and rhythm from all the Gregorian chants. If you see, the Gregorian chant is basically just a line of melody. Everybody sings the same. And the lyrics is the most important thing. If I want to say God loves me and wants to save me for eternity, that's what matters. So the music will follow the lyrics. So I say, God loves me and he wants to save me for eternity. And everybody will answer, Amen. They didn't have women. They didn't have harmony with other voices. It was just one line of melody, because he wanted to elevate spirituality, okay? Very important to understand this aspect, okay? Then we have Luther coming, and Luther had to do something. There were not enough hymns in the Christian church. Because, somehow they were detaching from the Israelite culture and going all over the place, different cultures. Luther had to go and take some popular melodies and turn them into hymns. Some of the hymns we have in our hymnal, they were the national anthem of a country or a typical song of a certain place. For instance, there's one of my favorite songs, that was a traditional Hispanic melody. You see, he just got there, and of course he composed some and got some compositions that were hymns. Now, this is not the ideal thing, because usually you don't want to bring for the Lord something that was used in somewhere else, but it was dedicated. Imagine you have trees, and you're going to say, those are normal trees, and you're going to say, I'm going to dedicate this tree to the Lord. Some people have done that. Usually that tree starts getting more fruit than the other ones. It's interesting. So that's what he did. So most of the hymns we have come from that period, from the collection that he did. And of course, you know the tam 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 tam, which was his composition. I think he had a couple of others. Then we're going to enter into a sequence of history, into the melodic trend that is now more familiar to us. That's what we call usually the classical music. Now, classic was just one of those periods, but it became so strong that he kind of named all the other ones. So we have the Renaissance, the Baroque, the classic, and the Romantic. And that's what we call usually classical music. Chum, 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 cha-da-dum, cha-da-dum, chum, cha. That's my favorite, you can tell. This is the time that I bring it. So this is what is happening. Now, I want us to understand this. In all over Europe, it's not like I want to listen to some song, go download and have it on your device and just play it. I mean, for you to have music, it had to be live. So it was not cheap, right? To have musicians, I mean, you want to have a special birthday and have musicians, you're gonna pay, right? So not too many people had money to sustain musicians. So basically, most of the people that will ask for music would be the church that had money to pay, or some wealthy people that could also invite musicians and have them play. Of course, popularly in the Middle Ages, people will gather and do those Middle Ages songs. And if you find somebody that will play those typical guitars and things like that, you could have some live music. So either people will learn their instruments or they will be doomed, right? And that's why you see most of the classical music is religious topics, because those are the ones that are paying it. Now, some musicians were not religious, and some were in fact mocking and pretending to do a religious thing, but it was just because the Catholic Church was paying. But we will see, as we analyze the structure of music and its effects, we will see how, in terms of the structure of music, we had, like I would say, clean music in those days. There were also satanic classical music, like Paganini, I think they say, not Paganini, it was what is the violinist that they say he was a Satanist and stuff. It will come to me then.
Is it Carlos Santana?
Huh?
Carlos Santana?
No, that's a recent guy. Carlos Santana is satanic also, but it's mystic. But this I'm talking about. It's a classic guy. His songs are very kind of Tchaikovsky style sometimes, but it will come to me. Well, there's going to happen a phenomenon that is going to change the world forever. Okay, and I mean, the Portuguese and the Spaniards were kind of involved in this. The Europeans decide to go for the discoveries. So they set boats and the Portuguese are planning to go around the world, and then they go this way. They want to bring the spices from the Middle East without bringing them through land, because they always pay a lot of fees and sometimes they have attacks and stuff like that. So you're thinking we can go through sea and bring all those spices. It's not like today that you want to season your salad or even salt. All those things were very expensive. I don't know if you are aware, but the word salary comes from salt, sal. The soldiers were paid with salt because it was so expensive that you could trade that with anything else. So that's where the word salary comes. It's like you're getting salted. Okay, so the Portuguese go. In Europe, music is connected mainly with church. So where you will hear the best music, the best musicians, and the best works. Yes, Paganini was that one, right? Yeah, that's one of them. There's more that were Satanists. Bach, for instance, he was very spiritualistic. So Bach sounds that he's playing. Mozart. Bach is spiritual. Mozart, he has a lot of. I scared somebody there. It was not Bach. I always confuse those two.
I like Bach a lot.
Mozart, he has the magic flute. He talks about mythology and witchcraft, and he mixed that. The Catholic Church sometimes has a little tolerance to those things. So it's all these mystic things, but Mozart is not really Christian, or the things he composes, right? Now, the European are with all this tradition on their back, and now they decide to go meet other places, and they are in for a shock, right? So they get to Africa, and they start realizing how is the music with the African rituals. Boom, 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 boom. And they notice that the music is also controlled by the wizard. So it's also connected to the spiritual thing. Usually he's the guy that plays the drums, and the worship is all around music. He noticed that the music starts boom, 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 and goes increasing, and people are getting into ecstasy, then trance, and then strange things start happening, and people start falling. And I know you have seen this somewhere. That's where it came from. Now, they believed that when that was happening, it was because the spirits were getting to them, which they were not totally wrong, but they thought it was good spirits. Okay? Interestingly, in many charismatic churches, you see the same thing happening. They also say it's the Holy Spirit. But it's a little bit weird that the Holy Spirit will work the same way as those spirits will work in Africa. Because I had a friend, he was a missionary with us in Brazil. He used to be the player in a charismatic church. And he says he will synchronize with the pastor, because as the rhythm goes and all the thing gets, you start seeing people, they are kind of oblivious of reality, they get in ecstasy, then in trance, and that's when they start speaking tongues or doing some manifestations like that. So it's the similar sequence, and we will understand soon. I will explain what really happens to the person in that moment, okay? So they are seeing all this, and they're like seeing that music is also very connected, but it's different. They get the slaves. Unfortunately, Portuguese and Spaniards were the one that started this modern slavery, you know. We will bring them from Africa. There will be many stationary in the islands where I was born, and then to the New World, either to Brazil or to North America. So we started trafficking slaves, right? Well, they get those slaves and bring them to the New World. And who is here? Native Americans. And they now find a different type of music. So now they have Indian rituals. Notice that in the African rituals, the drum set was the main key element in worship. And in the Indian rituals, although it's a different rhythm, it's the same thing. Boom, 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 boom. And the same thing. We dance to shun away the bad spirits, the evil spirits, and to invite the good spirits. We want the spirits to bless us with the rain and all these things. And who is leading the music? The shaman. So it's also very spiritual. If you see, in all continents, it's a spiritual phenomenon. Music is very spiritual. The word inspiration comes from Latin in spirito mode. It's like a spiritual force that comes through you to give you creativity. As an artist, sometimes you think that you are creative, but I came to the conclusion, after looking at some of the songs I composed with my band, I thought I was being inspired by God, and then I look at the lyrics and I say, I wrote this? It's like I was getting inspiration from what I was consuming, right? So they say that artists don't create, they transform, because you are fed with something and you process that in new creativity. So I believe today that either you are inspired by God or by Satan. There's no middle ground. And people that think they are having a creative idea, there are stronger spiritual forces that inspirate you. So that's the source of the word, that's what it means, okay? So they are seeing all this, and now they have three cultures in the same continent that never happened before in the world. We have the European melodic trend with the African and Indian rhythmic trends, okay? It's gonna happen something that is called the miscegenation of cultures. They are musicians, they get influenced with each other. They, hey, oh, how you do that? Yeah, good idea, I'm gonna adopt that. They started liking the new sounds and interconnecting. And something interesting is going to happen here that never happened before. 3 continents and their musical culture in one place. And then we have the Civil War. The slaves are being liberated. And those African men that had no access to European instruments, now they get a salary. Now they go to those houses where the white men left their instruments when they went to war. They buy those instruments and they start playing them with their rhythmic style. So the European will go ta 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 ta. An African gets that and goes ta 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 ta. It's like rhythm on it. Europeans will play the guitar, and you see that all the way that now they take those instruments, they add the rhythm into that, okay? And from the 2 lines of what we call now African American, that we have 2 lines of those liberated slaves. Some slaves are saying, well, if there is a God, why did he allow me to be a slave? I don't care about spiritual things. Religion is connected to the white man that claims to be Christian. I don't want to know anything about religion. I want to enjoy my life. They go to the pubs. They get into drugs, alcohol, women. That's all they want to do. We have on the other side the guys that are saying, oh, God is there. We learn a lot with Christianity, even with the colonization. And just because people practice wrong things, it doesn't mean anything. They are now Christians and they want to thank God they were set free. And we are seeing the formation of 2 groups. Those that are turning to God are adopting more the melodic trend. And they take their Negro spirituals and are going to instrumentalize them. Those who reject God are turning to the pubs and nightclubs, and they are immersing mainly in 3 styles that start coming from the mixing of their African roots, more rhythmic, with European instruments, more melodic. So they get a harmony melodic rhythm altogether, and they name those styles according to the things that are important for them. And this is very key, okay? So we have blues. And the guy is facing down. And you, I barely hear what I understand. You see? It's good for people with bad accent, you know? You never know what you're saying, right? What they are saying is, blues is like you are in a state that you're doing drugs, everything is going bad, but you don't care. You know, you're in this mode. You know, you drag yourself. Like blues is like country music. You know, your wife is gone, your dog is gone, the house is lost. It's all about the bad things in life. I saw this cartoon the other day. It's like this guy sitting on the porch and there's a dog and the dog said, I would like you to not sing those things about me in your songs. Okay. Then we have swing. Swing is a reference to the movement of the body during the intercourse. It's all about moves. I don't know, but if you remember, and we will talk about him a little bit further, when Elvis started being famous, he could not be recorded from the waist down. It was considered obscenous. Of course, what he did in those days is nothing considered what people do now, but you see how things have evolved. So swing is about that. That's why the movement of the body is all that matters. Jazz is in fact a little change on a word that is a slang word, derogatory word for the climax in the male intercourse. And all the style has to do with climax. It's all this seems disorganized until we get to the top. So they are really defining the things that matter to them. Drugs and addiction, and intercourse. Okay? And the music is expressing, all music is worship. All music is worship. It's, you sing what is important for you, what matters and drives your life. And that's what they are singing. Those might be singing what drives and is the engine of their lives. Now, this is key now. From those two trends and groups, we're going to see two music styles being born. From the side of those who reject God as their solution and source and drive for life, we see the birth of rock and roll. It's born from the basis of blues, swing, and jazz. From the Negro spirituals, when they instrumentalize their Negro spirituals, we see the birth of the original gospel. Why do I say the original gospel? Because when we hear the expression gospel music today, this is not what I'm talking about. Because gospel music was very influenced when people from the churches started seeing the money that those guys were making in the world and started venturing in careers in the world to make some money with the talent they developed in the Christian sect, okay? The Christian groups. And then they come back to their churches and they want to influence the music in their churches the way they sang in the world. So we all know that Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, they all come from this gospel background. Even Elvis, okay? They come from this gospel background. They were good because music was an important thing in their culture in the church, and now they want to use that to make money. And when they come back, they want to use those styles when they sing in church. Okay, we will talk a little bit about Elvis on that sense. Now I want you to notice something interesting because, as I said, they were naming things according to their beliefs, what mattered to them. And if you notice, this expression rock and roll is from the ghettos of New York, and it refers to intercourse in the back seat of a car. We are talking, if we see it as a noun, a rock is something hard, a roll is something cylindrical, and I don't want to be more specific. If we see it as a verb, rocking is going back and forth or swinging, and rolling is like rolling around. So people, the auto radios were coming up, people will have rock and roll playing in the radio while they were rock and rolling in the back seat of the car. Now, there's an interesting thing here. Because if you mix the noun with the verb, what is a rock? Who is the rock? Jesus. What is to roll? This music was designed to make the rock roll down the hill, to destroy Christianity. Now, you might say, well, we are forcing things. If you go, there are many bands that sing from the birth of rock and roll that clearly says that the devil is the father of rock and roll. Okay? This is not arguable. That's what they claim. And we'll see a little bit the story, the history of some of those bands. Okay? So this music is, in fact, the Bible tells us clearly, upon this rock I will build my church. So if the church is built upon the rock, if we make the rock roll, we will destroy the churches. Please notice, what was Satan's goal? To turn songs of praises into songs of curse. Right? So if we make the rock, do you know that in the beginning Christians will not accept rock and roll? You see many videos from those days breaking the records, and parents like, yeah, this is worldly. I mean, who considers that worldly today? I mean, that's what we do. Yes, I know. I'm saying the world in general. I know we do. Thank you. You see, so this concept, if we are not upon the rock, if we don't build our house upon the rock, if we build our house upon a rock that rolls and shifts, we are not in a solid rock. So just a spiritual side note there. Okay? Now, let's hear from the horse's mouth, right? Because you might say, well, this pastor has a prejudice with all the things. First, I want to say a disclaimer. All the songs and musics that I'm going to show, I'm just talking about the problems with my favorite music. So I'm not criticizing things that I didn't like, okay? All the ones are basically music that I liked, okay? So, we are seeing all this sequence, the rhythmic trend, the melodic trend, and the mixing that is now happening, and how we have two kinds of music showing up. Let me ask you this right off the bat. If you were Satan, and you know there were these two trends, and those are the ones that believe in Christ, and those are the ones that don't believe in Christ, or Christianity and God, and you want to turn songs of praises into songs of curse, what would you try to do?
Infiltrate the original gospel.
Merge somehow, bring these here somehow, right? So that's obvious, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But let's see a little bit more how this is worked. So we're gonna see this guy, Robert Johnson, is considered the father of rock and roll. He was a singer from blues, swing, and jazz, a player and singer. In fact, there's a movie, The Crossroads, is about the birth of that, okay? It's the same guy that did Karate Kid and, you know. Robert Johnson used to go with musicians like B.B. King, and he would not play. He was just following around. And one day he had a discussion with the parents at home. He left home for 6 months. And after 6 months, he showed up. And the guys were playing there and jamming and ready to go play in a concert or so. And he said, "Can I play?" And everybody looked at him and said, "Robert, what do you mean, can I play? We all know you cannot play." He says, "Well, let me do it and let the people judge." So he played, and everybody was like, "Robert, how come in 6 months you are playing better than all of us that have played for years?" And he said, "I went to the crossroad and made a deal with the devil. I sold my soul to the devil to receive musical talent." So again, this is not Christians trying to criticize this. This is what they said. In fact, he has several songs. He has a song that says, "Early in the morning, I heard knocking at my door, and I say, 'Hello, Satan, I know it's time to go.' And it says, 'Satan and I go hand in hand,'" something like that. And he died in a strange way. First, they said they never saw him practicing. Never saw him practicing with the guitar. He would just get the guitar and play it. And he died in a strange way, like howling and like he was in pain and affliction and not even being able to say anything. But he will mention this agreement he had with the devil in several things. Now, we will see more about that, how the Satanic Church claims the same thing about music, okay? And we saw that Satan, that was his specialty in heaven, all right? Well, that was the father of rock and roll. A lot of people don't know about Robert Johnson, right? But we know about Elvis. You know, I remember I used to like Elvis. I'm not ashamed of admitting that. So usually the ladies are like, "Oh, are you lonesome?" You know, right? Now, you might say, "Well, hey, aren't you taking this so far?" Because Elvis, I mean, what was wrong with what he was singing? I want to tell you that in these days, it's hard for us even to see what Christians were singing that was wrong. Besides the movements of the legs, I mean, it seems like to be singing love songs, right? So we'll have to analyze a little bit what he says, okay? First, in the biography of Elvis, his bodyguards were saying that he was a fan of Madame Blavatsky, that he was all immersed in occultism. In fact, he named the back vocal of his band the Voices of the New Age. Now, Madame Blavatsky, she was from the Russian theocracy. She came to the US, and she is the founder of the Theosophical Society, which is basically the birth of modern Satanism. Okay? And we will see her connection soon. So Elvis claims to be a fan of Madame Blavatsky, and he's using expressions like the New Age, and he sings things like, as far as a man is able to dream, he can fly and go places, something like that he has in his lyrics. People might argue, well, Elvis used to sing hymns. What happened to Elvis is that he was raised in a black church where gospel music was very strong. He tried several times to enter the choir and was never considered good enough. Well, his producer had a dream. He said, if I find a white guy, because of the prejudice that was in America in those days, if I find a white guy that will sing and dance like a black guy, I will be rich. And he found Elvis because he had all this culture. If you would see the way blacks will sing in those days, blacks will many times be in shows and the show industry and music industry. They had a very typical way, and Elvis is adopting a lot of those moves with legs. If you see like James Brown, the moves or Jamie Davis, what is his name? Sammy Davis? Sammy Davis. The way Elvis is adopting all of these ways that was typical from the black. And the way he will always feel guilty about this. I feel he was a victim of fame, probably one of the biggest ones, because he was trapped into this. And when he will sing songs, hymns, he will always cry because he had this guilt in his heart, because he knew he had turned his back to some things to achieve others. And he would force people. He had a chapel in Graceland where he will force people to come and hear him read the Bible, because he was trying to get rid of this guilt feeling that he had. And he died in a very unfortunate way. I mean, the Bible says, by his fruits we shall know them. And I'm not criticizing, because I think he was a victim of, the system trying to make money out of him. You hear his songs, many of his songs are cries. For me, like that song that he sang to his wife, maybe I didn't treat you. You see, he's a man in pain, right? And the natural result will be, trying, because artists that go in, especially in those days, they will go on drugs all the time, not only doing drugs like an addiction, but to try to stay awake, to keep going in tourneys and all this. It's a lot of stress, right? So those are fruits that are not typical from a Christian. And I mean, some of the things he would say. But when we talk about rock and roll, we think about what they call the four horsemen. Again, I want to remind you, all these people that I'm putting on the chart, was the things that I would listen to, okay? So I'm not trying to attack. I didn't share this in the morning. In fact, I was going to. But my favorite band was U2, okay? And I remember one day somebody shared with me an article that I found. And I thought, wow, yeah, I'm going to check the article. And we see Bono greeting the Pope and explaining the lyrics, like The Fly, saying it's a old demon teaching a young demon how to derail Christians from the church. And I'm like, okay. Then I'm seeing lyrics where he has a curse word and then Jesus in the middle, and he's talking about Jesus. And the first thing that I tried to do was to shake the sauce from the potatoes, right? The pork sauce and the potatoes, and I'm gonna eat only the potatoes. So no, the song is not good. Then the Lord was impressing me. Those potatoes were cooked in the bakes. It was baked in the pork sauce. And I had to come to the conclusion, and I literally got in despair. I remember I knelt before the Lord and said, Lord, if you would be asking me to let go Red Hot Chili Peppers, Limp Bizkit, or, whatever, Eminem, but this is my favorite band, and With or Without You was my favorite song, and I'm like, Lord. And the Lord said, well, if you have something that you are not willing to let go because of me, you have a idol. A problem also. I didn't think I was a fan of the U2, because I didn't have posters or anything. But I remember at that morning, it really dawned to me. I started crying and asking the Lord to take it away from me because I was not able. And the Lord did that. It was a painful process, but the Lord did that. Now the Beatles, of course, I don't know. If you don't like Beatles, you probably have a problem. You should see a doctor. I mean, those are love, love me do. It looks like so many clean songs. It's all about love, Michelle, my belle, and all those things. So let's analyze a little bit. It's a painful journey now. I'm sorry for those that like Beatles. I went back. Sorry. I was not trying to run away from the truth. Well, the Beatles, everything was going fine. It was just 4 boys from Liverpool trying to, make love songs, young people, and getting girls, pull their hairs. And until they go to the Middle East, and their music changes forever, at least now visibly, and they bring all these gurus from Hinduism, Hare Krishnaism, and all these things to the Western world. If you know anybody that is now a Buddhist or practices yoga, thank the Beatles. Because the Western world was not open to these at all. But you start seeing now their songs have sitaras. How do you say that in English? Sitara. In English, that's the way we say it? Sitara. Have sitaras now among. Oh yeah, because you. Okay, you know better than I do on this. So they are now having those songs and the influence in their music and their lyrics. And we start seeing some strange things if people will pay attention. They are now bringing songs like to Hare Krishna. For instance, they have this song, My Sweet Lord, Hallelujah. And in fact, in Portugal, we used to sing this song in the Pathfinders camp out. Like if it was, we thought, My Sweet Lord, Hallelujah. And then, English was poor there. Not as accurate. We thought he was saying, My sweet Lord Jesus Christ. But in fact, he said, Hare Krishna. Okay? Now, George Harrison and the Beatles were part of the movement Chant and Be Happy, which is a Hare Krishna movement. And they knew what they were singing about. The definition in the Hare Krishna movement of who is Hare Krishna, he is the prince of the demons, the serpent of eternity, the god of destruction. I mean, how more clear can it be? When they asked George Harrison, what is the purpose of that song? He says, well, the idea is to get people used to My Sweet Lord, Hallelujah, and then shift. And they don't even notice that they are singing My Sweet Lord, Hare Krishna, and they will suddenly say, well, it's not that bad at all. It wasn't that nothing happened, right? So it was the main idea. They knew what they were singing about. And they participated also in a political campaign with a guy that I'll be talking soon, and you will see how they knew. They are also pioneers in bringing subliminal messages, okay? In those days, I remember when I was younger, sometimes some guy like me will come to a church to talk about subliminal messages and how Queen have this and that band have that. And in those days, it was a big thing. Now you don't need to hide it because people take it like openly. But in those days, I remember a guy that came to my church once. He was explaining like that song from Queen, Another One Bites the Dust. When you turn it in reverse, it says, I decide to do drugs, something like that.
Some of us smoke
Marijuana, yes. Who said it?
Some
Yeah,
of us smoke.
exactly. I decided to smoke marijuana. Is what this was saying. Yeah, that's it. And so, for instance, they have this song, this album, Abbey Road, everybody knows this, is packed with subliminal messages. In fact, this is a funeral. The idea is to make the album sell by instilling the subliminal message that one of the Beatles had died. So what we have is the doctor, the guy from the funeral home, the guy that is going to dig the hole, and the dead man that in many places in Britain is buried barefoot. And now, then we have a police car, and then we have a car that the license plate is LMW, which is Linda McCartney, which was Paul McCartney Paul McCartney's wife, weeps or widow. And the word Beatles is written with a B that is a 3, like saying there are only 3 Beatles. And all this mysticism started, some people believe, and I'm not going to go into that merit, that Paul McCartney is not the original Paul McCartney, and there's another Paul McCartney that was left-handed and right-handed. All this, true or not, we cannot prove, but was making the album sell. So they are pioneers. Today, even Christian music has subliminal messages. And for your awareness, there was found even one in an Adventist singer in Brazil. Okay? So, I'm not going to talk about subliminal messages. It had its days, and it's serious. The way it works is this. Your brain has primary memory, secondary and tertiary memory. What your brain does, when something comes in a subliminal message associated to something that is perceptible, your brain will store them connected. The information is connected. For instance, in the movie, that movie for the kids, Hercules, there's a sentence that is saying, I'm about to reorganize the world, and there's only this stupid guy or something like that is preventing me from doing so, and it goes in flames, and the flames write the word Jesus. What happens in the child's brain, the brain registers in the primary memory the word stupid, and connects it to the image of Jesus in the back memory. Whenever the brain retrieves for the word stupid, it will retrieve and connect to the word Jesus, and vice versa. So we are not perceiving what we record in the secondary memory. I worked with advertisement for a while, and some things are even forbidden in advertisement because it's so powerful. You ever heard the story about one frame that shows Coca-Cola? And even recently in that program, the chef, they had one frame that showed McDonald's, and McDonald's was sued really big time because of that, and they lost, right? So this is a real power, but I'm not even going there, okay? Because in my country there's a saying. They say, you can't hide the cat behind the couch because you'll see the tail. If there's a tail, there's a cat, right? So some people, I remember one day this guy came, hey, do you know that Coca-Cola in reverse says hello devil? And I said, I don't need to reverse it. It says hello devil. I mean, the thing is addictive, right? It's people making money about it. So the tail will always tell you where the cat is, right? So, but I want to go with what they say about it, okay? And we want to see that. So I want you to know that those guys were the main icon ever. Modern bands even imitate them. You say One Direction, they went to Abbey Road and did exactly what they did. This is the U2, they sang on the top roof. In the 80s, you probably remember this. They stopped the traffic and it was a mess. And they did the video clip with the police showing up and all that stuff, imitating what the Beatles did when I think it was Helter Skelter, that was the thing that they did that, okay? So they have influenced really rock music, but there was something happening that is really where the rubber meets the road here. And it's gonna tell us a lot. So this is the part that we have to understand. Remember, rock, roll. The goal is to make the rock, Christianity, go down. Satan's goal is to turn songs of praise into songs of curse, right? Notice, in 1967, we are in the psychedelic era. We have Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which is LSD, Strawberry Fields Forever, which is in fact the arms of somebody that is doing drugs. It looks like a strawberry field. All these messages that sound revolutionary, Woodstockian, And they issue an album at the same time of their rivals, the Rolling Stones. Now notice this, because I have so much to tell you with so little time, friends. When I talk about movies, I talk about how you work the mind of the person outside of the screen. For instance, what's his name? The guy that did The Matrix. Keanu Reeves. He did The Matrix. In Matrix is Neo, which is the one. He's representing like the Messiah. And then the next movie is Constantine, where he's a fallen angel. And now he's gonna play Christ. So all this is building on the mind of the people, a trend, even outside. You cannot detach from the movie and reality. Sometimes if you play a villain in a movie, you are attacked in the streets because people cannot detach that you were just playing a role. Okay? The same thing happens here. The way those bands, by the way, the bands are organized in a pentagram. Oh, you are aware of that? Each line of band style has a different purpose. One is about sex, the other is about Satanism, the other. If you notice, all the heavy metal bands, they are all Christian topics, basically. Black Sabbath, well, it's not so much heavy metal, but it's a mix, it's still heavy metal. Judas Priest. It's all these names, they are all connected to Megadeth, you see, to spiritual things, okay? Based on the Hegelian theory, which says, if you are familiar with that, it says Satan works like this. Let's say I come here and I say, can I smack your leg?
Please.
And you say no. But if I'm smacking your left leg and say, I will stop smacking your left leg if you let me smack your right leg, now you will say, yes, because I mean it's better than that. So Satan works with this. It's called thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. That's why you have two parties when you go for elections. Sorry about that. You know, it's like you have no option. Whatever way you choose, you will go to the same place. You see, it's like I'm telling you, are you brown hair or blonde? Are you blonde or brunette? I mean, if you are red hair, what will you do? It's like I'm not giving you an option. So Satan was working with this. Those were the bad guys, okay? Drugs and sing I Can't Get No Satisfaction and nasty songs. And open Satanists, okay? All right? So, and then we have the good guys, okay? Love, peace, harmony, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. We get to the same place. Now notice, this album is Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club's Band. Wow, seems clear. Well, these guys is his Satanic Majesty Request. Main song, Sympathy for the Devil. Ooh, those guys were bad, right? So parents are now, yeah, well, we are opening up to rock and roll. Not these guys, though. Listen to that, right? This is just to push that. If you fall here, great. If not, you run from this to that. So when I would do design, I will always put among my proposals to the client a bad one. That the client is right away, oh no, right away is like, okay, I'm gonna run for this, right? Notice now something interesting, because in the album from the Rolling Stones, who are those? Ringo Starr? Ringo Starr is this one. John Lennon? I think that's Paul McCartney. Wow! Weren't there enemies? And now let's look at the Beatles album. Welcome the Rolling Stones. All good boys. Wait a second. You guys were not against each other? And if you go back, you notice that the two albums have they look like the same thematic, right? Those guys dressed with fantasy uniforms, those guys dressed with fantasy uniforms. But if you pay attention to the Beatles albums, now, what was the Rolling Stones album? And if you notice, they almost like complete each other on the style. Okay? In fact, in this cover, they had Hitler, but the producer was a Jewish guy. Says that we're going too far, guys. We're not gonna. They had Hitler. If you see the pictures from the first takes for the cover, Hitler was one of the figures they had there. Okay? We will analyze soon the people there. So here we have the Rolling Stones. Down here we have a Eastern, a Hindi prostitute dressed in red. Where did you read that? She has a cup in her hand. Where did you read that? Revelation. Is this Christ's church or the other woman? The other woman. She has a pentagram in the other hand, and she is from Eastern mysticism, which is the source of New Age, the source of the universal Christ, called the Maitreya, which is the Christ that will come and be accepted by all religions, which is technically Satan when he comes pretending to be Christ. Okay? Are you seeing the connections? Then they ask them, what is the point of this cover? And they say, well, the cover has our idols, the people that we admire. Among Satanists and other terrible people they have there, the second person they have on top is Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley is a disciple of Madame Blavatsky that Elvis liked, okay? And he's considered the father of New Age and modern Satanism, okay? Now, notice a little detail here. The album was issued in 1967, and Aleister Crowley died in 1947. After writing the book Magic, in fact, the album Sugar Magic from Red Hot Chili Peppers is a reference to that. Magic is a book that is teaching people how to channel demons and other things, spiritualistic things. Now notice the song. It was 20 years ago today. Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play. Aleister Crowley wrote the agenda for the New Age. He says society has to take 5 steps, 5 revolutions before we are ready to receive the Antichrist. We have to have a social revolution, revert the values. If you notice, since the revolution of the 60s, the youth controls society, no longer mature adults or the elderly. Now, older people want to dress like the young people so that they are not left out. In the past, it was the other way around. Young people want to dress so that people start considering them already an adult, a mature guy. Society is totally reversed. Social revolution. We have to bring a drug revolution, a sex revolution. He was considered a pedophile, the worst cruel guy that you can imagine. He will initiate boys into practices. Then a spiritual revolution and a satanic revolution for the world to be ready. It's for the New Age. I don't know if you are aware that the expression New Age means that we have transitioned from the age of Pyxis, the fish is the symbol of Christianity, to the age of Aquarius, which is the age of Satan. So we are no longer under Christianity. We are getting ready for the Antichrist. That's what it basically means. In the 60s, they would have movies and songs about this, about the age of Aquarius, and all these, Woodstock thing. It was all about these philosophies. People were thinking, and we put government and Vietnam and all the things in the same pack, but we are just feeding them Eastern mysticism and Satanism. Okay? Now, when they asked the Beatles, what was the main theme? Oh, by the way, Aleister Crowley is the patron saint of rock and roll. Several bands sing about it. There's a song, I think it's Metallica, that says, Mr. Crowley, you would talk to the dead, something like that. You enlighten the world with magic. and who waited on Satan's call. Aleister Crowley says, some people talk to demons, I talk to Satan himself. He says, he considered himself a prophet of Satan to prepare the world for the coming of the Antichrist and the New Age. And he says the world has to go through this revolution. Now, I want you to notice, for instance, another one that will use him a lot was David Bowie. Has an album that shows similar pictures. Now, the interesting thing, he is a disciple from Madame Blavatsky, which was a friend from the Fox sisters. You remember Ellen White talks about the Fox sisters as being the beginning of modern spiritism. Okay, so we see the connection. He was born the year she wrote a book, and he's like a fulfillment of what she is writing, and he absorbed all the things to turn into Satanism. And they were initiating spiritual manifestations. As a church, we believe that spiritualism will take over in the last days, and it will be so normal that people don't even consider it spiritualism. If you go to, and I'm not encouraging or recommending, if you go to the movies, it's all spiritualism. If you try to learn arts, it's all monsters and demons, and try to learn 3D or something like that. The world is already taken by this, okay? I want us to understand what is going on here. Every time you hear the word revolution, that should raise a red flag for you. Satan uses revolution to make changes that he's tired of taking slowly, and he needs something to shift the boat, okay? You see, the Industrial Revolution changed society forever. The revolution from the 60s changed society forever. And we enter the preparation for the New Age, okay? So I want us to see what were the revolutions that were happening, because Rex Church is a satanic priest. He's here in a temple. Anton LaVey was the guy that wrote the Satan's Bible. Those are all Satanists, and all they say the same thing. Satan always had the best tunes. Satan can give power in music to people if they commit to him. He said, our goal is to attack the iron youth, and we do that through art, literature, and music. Okay, so those are the tools that are used, and I want you to understand this. I don't want to dive too much into all the bands, but I want us to understand this. You have bands that have public satanic agreement, and bands that have private satanic agreement. Like Rolling Stones was a public satanic agreement. They openly claim to be satanic. Beatles, private satanic agreement. Usually, open satanic agreement bands last forever. How old are the Rolling Stones? Black Sabbath. While private satanic agreements, Satan will charge them at some time. Usually between 27 and 33. Those are the years of the ministry of Christ. Look, Kurt Cobain, 27. Jimi Hendrix, 27. Janis Joplin, 27. Jim Morrison, 27. Amy
Winehouse,
27. It's all, when Kurt Cobain committed suicide, his mom said, "I am so disappointed that my son decided to join the stupid club. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band." The band from that club of the agreement, okay? They asked the Beatles, "What is the main topic of your band?" And they quoted Aleister Crowley, "Do what thou wilt." That's the summary of the law, okay? So I want us to understand this. The revolution that happened in the 60s, all the people involved were leading disciples of Aleister Crowley. All these movement, the transsexual gay movement that you see now was being planted here. The first gay parades. Harry Hay, disciple of Aleister Crowley. The drug revolution, Timothy Leary. He was a politician from Harvard. The Beatles composed the theme song for his campaign. And he was with the tune in and drop out movement Flower Power, Liberation, all the things from Woodstock, Disciple from Aleister Crowley. Those were revolutions that were happening as part of the strategy to rock society and change society. Now I want you to notice how this is masqueraded with a beautiful message. In fact, people sometimes get upset when I talk about those things because it's like I'm trying to pinpoint on things that are ridiculous, so beautiful. I'm sure you have heard this song as a beautiful peace song, and you never paid attention to some details. Look at this. Imagine there's no heaven. Where is God? In heaven. No countries. What are we trying to do now with border and immigrations and all this stuff? The battle. No religion. One world religion. No possessions. The new reset. They were singing this in the 60s because all the vision was traced already. A brotherhood of man. You know, 666 is a brotherhood of men uniting to build Babel. And instead of a brotherhood with God, Christ is the unity point. Look at this. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. There are more people into this. I hope someday you will join this side and the world will be as one. Unity without God was what was tried in Babel. A brotherhood of men. Now, I want you to notice how those bands are connected to each other in the message. Look, the world must be as one. You two imitate Beatles on the top of the roof. Then they sing one. Well, it's too late tonight, dark and light, to drag the past out into the light. Look, have you come here for forgiveness? Who came here for forgiveness? Have you come to raise the dead? Who is he talking about? Have you come here to play Jesus to the lepers in your head? We are one, but we are not the same. This is a brotherhood of man. It's not that unity in Christ. This is the unity of Babel. And now, a more discreet and at the same time obvious one. There comes a time when we heed the certain call. What did the Beatles say? I hope someday you will join us. And the world must come together as one. We are not talking about feeding Africa. And now notice, which Christ are we united with? As God has shown us by turning stones into bread. Who was the God that wanted the stones to be turned into bread? Satan, was not Jesus. This is the God we're talking about. We are the world. We are the people. We are a brotherhood of men. We will solve our problems without God. We are one, but we are not the same. This is the constant message in beautiful songs. I'm sure we all have songs that are associated to beautiful moments in our lives. Then we hear that song and we're like, whoo, it brings the past, it brings memories, it brings good feelings. Satan does this. He associates bad things on his philosophy with good feelings. So it's so hard to reject because, those songs, they bring good emotions to us. But we are not many times noticing that we are singing another anthem. We are singing a song of another philosophy. And if we understand that faith comes by hearing, the lack of faith can come by what we hear that goes against faith. And this is what I want to show you now. I don't know if you want to stretch your legs a little bit. I'm going to try. It's a long marathon here, okay? Maybe we can stand up a little bit and take a deep breath, okay? Because we are coming to the moment where the rubber meets the road. This was the summarized version. I watched this series, and I will only encourage you to watch if you are immersed with rock music or pop music. If you're not, I would discourage you. At the time I was, they sold their souls from rock and roll. It's an old series. 10 years ago, that's when I was exposed to that. But those guys go into old bands and show all their connections to the club, okay? All right. Let us. Oh, I have one here. Sister, thank you. Okay. All right. Yes. Say it again. Little Richard. Yes. Yeah. You won't take into the call. Oh, he was converted into Christianity, right? Yes, I heard about that. Yes, that's true. All right. So now we're going to see how music has an effect on us. And honestly, I would say these two last parts now are the most important ones, okay? I usually start by the lecture that I just did because I start showing people the scenario. A lot of people don't believe in God. And many also don't believe even in Satan. And I would say, don't you find a little bit absurd that if Satan doesn't exist, all those bands are singing the same thing? It seems a pretty much organized thing to me. We all know what we are talking about. In fact, I have a friend, might be a pastor now, but he was an elder at the time I met him. He had been converted for 4 years, right? He was a heavy metal guy. And one day, he was a Brazilian guy. It was when we were that I met him. One day, this guy, hey, oh, you like heavy metal here? They gave him a magazine with translation of the songs from his heavy metal bands. And this guy is super enthusiastic, long hair, all dark. He opens, it says, "We are not alone in this world. We have demons in our side too." He was like, what? He started reading those lyrics. He's like, this is what I'm listening to? He went straight to the barber shop, cut his hair, changed his clothes, and searched for a church, and found an Adventist church. That was how his conversion happened. He was not aware of what he was reading. You know, Satan doesn't worry if you are aware of not, as far as you accept it, even if you are not aware. You know, it's like insurance companies with the tiny letters. You signed it. Or those things like the updates. Who really reads all those policies? Look, we have updated our policies, like telling her, and then they give you this big list, and you just, right? And then you signed it. All right? Okay. So we are going to see how is music and how are the effects. For me, that was really what made the difference when I started understanding those things, and it gives me the criteria, because otherwise it could be just opinions, okay? Right. So music is basically composed by 3 main elements: melody, harmony, and rhythm. Again, don't panic. This is not for musicians. I'm going to try to explain it a very simple way. Musicians will also understand, but I want us to understand a very simple way. A melody is when you sing a sequence of notes. La 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 la. That's a melody. A harmony is when you have 2 different sequences of notes that go well together. If they don't go well together, you say it's out of tune, right? For instance, while one person is singing la 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 la, the other one is singing la 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 la. There are different melodies, different sequence of notes, but they harmonize. Rhythm is where the church has had a lot of discussions about, okay? And sometimes we have a confusion. I remember, I'm not ashamed to say this, but I remember I made a song about a pastor that would not let we had an a cappella group, and I would do big box, and the pastor is like, no, that is best. No, we won't have drums here. I said, what do you mean drums? It's the voice that God gave me. That's what I was. I would say, and we made a song for him about rhythm. No, a lot of people say, you know, in those, the Lord is good. The Lord is good. We had another guy that we will call him the Pharisee. He was, after my conversion, he was the person that supported our ministry the most. He made a car available for us to take everywhere because he knew we had nothing. And this guy was so impressed that the Lord was able to rescue me. And then he was like, Daniel, it's amazing. You know? We became almost best friends, and we had nothing to do with each other. He was the Pharisee for us. All right. So when we say rhythm, there's no music without rhythm, okay? What we are meaning is emphasized rhythm, okay? Because the rhythm is what marks the speed of a song. Now, researchers have found that melody interacts, I don't know if you notice that God works like this. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? Melody, harmony, and rhythm. Height, wide, and depth. Past, present, and future. Everything comes in packs like this. It's God's signature in everything. Physical, mental, and spiritual. That's what an individual is. Individual means he that cannot be divided. Researchers have found that melody interacts with your spiritual dimension. Harmony forces your brain to combine two different sounds and interacts with your mental dimension. And rhythm interacts with your physical dimension. If you notice, everything in your body has a rhythm. You know, people that cannot talk properly, they found out if they use a device to give the proper rhythm, they are able to speak normally. It's a rhythm problem. Your heart has rhythm. When you run, right? Your walking has rhythm. Nobody walks like this. You walk with right? You walk like that. You have a rhythm. Everything in your body, rhythm, that's irrefutable. That rhythm has to do with your body. Your brain has rhythm. You see, have you seen everything, right? So, then we have two other elements. People talk about message. Oh yeah, this song was a rock music, but I changed the lyrics. You know, it was saying Satan, Satan, but now I changed the lyrics now Christ, Christ. So now it's a worship song. We will talk about that soon, okay? Message has to do with your assimilation. Please beware that message is not necessarily the lyrics. Is what concept you internalize. That's the message, okay? And I will show you some examples soon, okay? Now I'm just giving you the structure. Then I'm considering two other things. Those are the main things. These are extras, okay? Volume, it interacts with your temper, the way you feel, you know. And tone interacts with your mood, your disposition. For instance, people that listen to depressive music, they tend to commit suicide or to self-mutilation and things like that because the disposition is affected. You have to be very careful with your natural tendency. For instance, if you come from a more like islands or stuff, we are more like in a high vibe. Other areas are more like in a depressive. I have this tendency for these both things. I would like Nirvana and songs like keep the same tone, same mood. You know, a little bit of that blues feeling that you're going down, but you're enjoying it still. So we have to be very careful with this. So now I want us to see what was the goal of the revolution of the 60s. So Satan started a plan in heaven. Things were not going well. He came to earth, started right away working that plan with humans. In Babel, he had it all figured out for the New Age movement. He wanted to start it then. God says, no, too fast. We're going to have to delay this. And he's working now 4,000 years. And he's finally worked society with several revolutions. Like the revolution that happened, the industrial era, brought a lot of devices that simplify things. Have you ever wondered, it says in Daniel 12:4 that people will run back and fro. Have you noticed that half of the things, if not 90% of the things we have here did not exist for 6,000 years? People would have to go, women would have to go to the river to wash the clothes, cook everything by hand, wash everything by hand, cut everything by hand. Now we have machines for everything. I mean, we have a machine that we leave it there and we go to whatever we want and it's ready. But we don't have time. How come it is? Okay, it's crazy, right? So I want us to understand this is the key. Satan brought the Industrial Revolution to clear machines, to have machines that will take us to another level. Then the wars took the women out of the homes. Now husbands are at the war. We have to step up. I'm talking about First and Second World War. And I'm not talking about the third one. I know there's a lot of talk about that, but and what happened is that society was totally disrupted. Those women are now getting paid. Once you taste a salary, you don't want to go back home. And life is now requiring more money, so both have to work. But Industrial Revolution produced TVs. Our kids can stay at home and be educated with a new mindset. You know, in advertisement, that's what is called above the line. It's when advertisement goes on TV. We're not talking about media, but I cannot avoid some pinches here and there. Media puts your brain in alpha mode, and that's why everything is a command. Buy this, call now, do that, because they know your brain is vulnerable, okay? So our generations were raised in this reformatting context. The 60s revolution was needed to revolutionize some things in society and to prepare the minds of the people, because remember, in Dura, music was on the background of the worship of the statue. Music is also the tool that is going to be used to bow down at the sound of international music. And I think you are getting where I'm going. Now, if you were Satan, which I know you're not, but if you were, let's think again. If this is interacting with the spiritual part, this with the mental, and this with the physical, what would you do? Very simple. You're going to unbalance music. We will talk about the tempo here soon. And you are going to revert things. You're going to put what stimulates the physical part first, because people will tend to be more carnal. Now, it took a work, because your grandma could not stand the beat of the songs of today, because she was not used to this. It was too much of a disruption. Satan has to always take things to the limit with one generation and then start the other generation from that point on and the next one. Our kids don't know even what it is to live without electronics. We were seeing the birth of internet. Internet is like natural for them, right? Even if you would go back, can you imagine living without a cell phone? I mean, it seems impossible, but in those days, you'll have to go to a phone booth to make a phone call. Right? There was no such a thing, hey, I'm running late. They wait. Right? It's like, now life has changed totally. We cannot even imagine. So a process was needed, and that's what I'm going to show you what was done in the revolution of the 60s with music. If you notice, they combined what we call the drum set, and it became the main element in rock bands. Pop music, the main element is the rhythm. So they asked Michael Jackson, how do you compose? He said, I choose a good beat. When I have a good beat, I had harmony. And then I produce the melody. What is Michael Jackson telling us? I work the physical side, then the mental side, then the spiritual part. It's like it doesn't matter. Rock and roll was made not to be understood, but to be felt. Look at your reaction. Watch people in a concert. Nobody is there. If the power will go off, this it look ridiculous. You know? It's like we are out. We are alienated, you know? Annihilated, I mean. We are alienated. That's the word. Something was not said.
We understood you, it's okay.
Thank you. But I need to develop this. So this was what was happening in the 60s. Look at the songs from Elvis and those bands. Oh, my love. They are very melodic, but the beat is coming in. Okay? Then we put more beat and less melody. More beat and how can we come from that? It was a process, you know. If you notice, I remember when I was a kid, I would listen to rock music. I would not understand anything of what they were saying. In fact, now that I know English, I look back and I said, that's what I was singing. Because I would make my own lyrics, you know. And I'm like, okay, who cares about what they are saying? It's the beat and the feeling and the lyrics is not, it doesn't matter. You can put whatever there, nobody is concerned with that. We will see how it will interact with us soon. Okay, so your body, for instance, in concerts, in rock concerts, drug addiction, rapes, and all the things go up like 500%. It's not like a little bit, it's 500% and more. So we are talking about something that has an influence on you, you cannot deny. Look, somebody that starts listening to a certain style of music, after 5 months, 6 months, it's totally changed. Why do you think that all the people that listen to heavy metal will walk like this, all that listen to rap and rock music walk like this? What is happening to their minds? Okay? The mind is being affected. You're absorbing a philosophy, a lifestyle. It's not just a music. So again,
Once you see it again, you're walking.
Okay. Pastor, I'm back to normal. All right. So what I'm trying to explain is we are affected. And there's nobody that can say, I am not affected. You see all the way we change the clothing, the philosophies of life. I remember my first CD was Bob Marley. I knew all the lyrics. One day I had a terrible, impressive, positive, but terrible experience. I'm on the subway and these 3 guys come in and sit down in front of me, and one of them just didn't sing, just said one sentence. And I knew exactly what song, what album. I look at him and I'm like, you know, we know what we're talking about. And it was a lot of philosophies and a lot of things that you get into that. And they started to be what you believe, especially, and we will see soon what happens to your brain with music. I will just explain how it is an addiction, okay? Well, I think you got this part. Now, message. Some people think that the message is in the lyrics. I usually use this illustration. Let's say I'm courting this girl and I want to ask her to marry me, okay? So I say, hey, I would like to invite you first to go out for dinner Thursday. Oh yeah, okay. I'll take her to this beautiful restaurant. We enter, so there are waiters there, like fine restaurant. We sit down and we are eating a nice meal. And I have my device, because now I don't need those big breaks that we had in the past. I have to go like this, but no need it. I take my device and I say, you know what, honey? And I click, and there's a little song playing. I want to tell you something, and the song goes. You are very special to me. Will you marry me? Do you think she will say yes? Is there a message in this song? Of course there is. You don't see a horror movie, the guy is coming with a knife and the song goes ta-da-da-da-dun, ta-dun, ta-dun. It doesn't make any sense. Right? You don't put the baby to sleep with running on the highway. And you don't see anybody driving, speeding. Songs have a message with or without lyrics. When you go to the nightclub, you go, turn, turn, you're feeling like you're the guy on the road, like until the police shows up and you see the red, blue lights. You think you're dominating it. Because the message is there. And the message is felt and internalized. Somebody once said something when I was presenting this lecture in a place that I never forgot. He says, if you want to know if a song is from Christ, or if it's not a worldly song, if it's a secular song that is not worldly, just ask yourself, what is the spirit of this song? Because the spirit of Christ is meekness, I get in the point. If you hear the songs, I call it the phenomena, right? You start hearing to a pop or rock song, right away this lip goes like, remember Billy Idol or something? And the head goes like, you start feeling like, I got some rebel thing in me, right? You're like, you are able to do things that you cannot. There's a message, okay? The second thing, or third, I don't know, volume. Balanced music usually has balanced volume. The way there's a hormonal interaction with your body with pop music or unbalanced music, it's usually the volume goes up. You see? I've never met anybody that will listen to classical music like like this. And it has rhythm also. And I've never seen somebody listening to rock and roll like very low, unless you don't want the parents to hear, right? And otherwise, what happens to the volume? I remember visiting my father in Boston. It's like, I'm waiting for him. Right? It's like those cars coming, sorry. Yeah. I mean, I'm outside and I cannot take it. How can you be inside with the windows closed and with that look like nothing is happening? Your world is falling apart, right? And your car too, right? Well, you got the point. This is a very important one now. Sorry. Now you know why I didn't want to have this lecture in the second. I think it helps us understand the character on the things. Tone. Oh, this is killing our youth. Okay? If you listen to a classical music or a melodic music, more balanced, okay? It has dynamics. Chun 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 chun. Did you see this? Rock music. The bass. The guitar. The drum. If you notice, you cannot do classical music with loops. You can do pop music, make pop music with loops. What is a loop? It's a sound that repeats itself. And the more rhythmic the thing, the more loops. You see, you just put like a song repeated. First, if you know 3 chords, you can form a rock band, right? If you know 5, it will succeed. But it's like, it's basically. And the song keeps going there. Then you vary a little bit and go back to the same thing, right? Why is this happening? Okay, first I want us to go back a little bit here to connect with this because it's very much. I'm using some humor here, but I'm trying to help you understand what has happened to us as individuals in our upbringing and why this is so addictive and what has happened to our youth and to society in general, how we were benumbed. Notice, if this is what stimulates your physical part and this is your spiritual part, let's take for instance a hip hop song. What is the first stimulus? This. Let's go to the harmony. There's no melodic harmony. Yo, yo, that's it. Come on, yo, yo, yeah. It's all rhythmic harmony. Then when it comes to melody, instead of the guy singing, he talks.
Yes.
This song has no spiritual stimuli. How can you be a spiritual person if you are hearing to something that is totally carnal? And if you would believe in rap and hip hop, you think you don't need to work. You smoke marijuana and here's the beat and you have a swimming pool filled with women and cars, luxury cars, and it's all beautiful. And that's how you end up in jail, right? I mean, this is formatting. We did an interview with some girls in Brazil that lived in the slums, and they came across our missionary project, and they heard the lecture, and we interviewed them. They would listen to Evanescence. I don't know if you are familiar. Evanescence, I'll say here. And they were self-mutilating and depressive, and we asked, why do you listen to this? She said, my life is a mess. When I go home, you know, my family is totally disrupted. When things started getting really bad, I enter my room, lock the doors, and just listen to the music because she understands me. She sings what those songs do. There was a guy, also another Brazilian, he's a hip-hop rapper, Brazilian. He has a song, a beautiful song. If we can call it song, it's like, you know, like the bachelor says, it's an oxymoron. Either it's a song or it's rap music. But I was very much into that. And he has a song, very sad song. He talks about the people in the slums. And the title of the song is, I Wish I Could Live in the Slums. He's like a guy that is so low in life that cannot even afford. He has to share a slum apartment. And the song goes like people mistreating him in the streets and saying, go work. And he said, I wish if somebody would give me a job. And he's like feeling, yeah, when I kill and rob and pile and all that, who cares? I know my day will come. For sure will come. So he's like a guy with no motives. And these guys were telling me, and I used to listen to this band also, and it was telling me, yeah, this guy understands my pain. I said, no, he doesn't. So yeah, listen to the lyrics. Says, where does he live? He lives in the slum? No, he's making a lot of money with that, while your brain is going on the same loop and you stay in the slums. It's because of this song that you hear that you're not coming out of the place where he's saying, yeah, poor you, you're there. You're there because somebody like him is making money with you. You see, people think they are identifying with something, but in fact, that is what is formatting them. Same phenomenon is happening with social media. I'm depressed, go to social media. But I'm not noticing that I'm depressed because I went to social media. And I'm anxious for a like, and then I had a lot of these likes, and this friending or unfriending me, and I'm like, now I'm anxious. All this dopamine is what is killing me. People that are in social media have higher ranks of depression than those that are not in social media. How come? Because it's a loop. Okay, I want you to understand this. The way pop music is made to hypnotize us. And it's made to put us in, I will show the brain soon and explain that, in alpha mode, which is similar to when you are hypnotized. You are not responding. By the way, media in general does this, okay? You are not proactively responding. You are benumbed. And in the 60s, that's when all those things started to be worked out. I do believe personally, Satan had these tools. Remember, he's a specialist in music. Prepared for the last days, for the last benumbing and formatting. I don't know if you are aware, but the frontal lobe, let me go to that slide and I'll come back here. Sorry. The frontal lobe of our brain is where we reason, make decisions, discern good and right, right and wrong. That's where we communicate spiritually. When you have a repetitive sound, your frontal lobe goes in alpha mode. How do you hypnotize somebody? Same song. How it is, let's take even the melodic instruments, okay, out. Okay? Because all of them are loops. All of them are a sound that is repeating. What people don't notice, look at somebody listening to their headsets, observe, and you will see this person is hypnotized. Sometimes the eyes are looking at nowhere, or the times are taken by the loop of the song. What happens is that when you have a repetitive sound over and over, your brain is shut down. Look at this. Let me take all the tracks. And some people say, oh, it is just a soft beat. That's like saying, oh, it's just a piece of the poisonous mushroom. You know, it's poison, right? Like, just imagine a light beat in a song. I'm gonna play it, and you're not gonna, I'll be merciful on you and stop, okay? This is just a light beat, okay? I'm taking all the other tracks out. So, if you hear this isolatedly, it's insane. Imagine that you are an entire afternoon listening to this. You get crazy. But as is cover it up with a lot of other sounds that energize you, because when the vibration of pop music comes, so the repetitive sound benumbs your frontal lobe, while the vibrations and excitement excite your thalamus and hypothalamus, which have to do with the production of hormones. That's why it's like you're being bombarded with excitement and you cannot hold it. Your body has to externalize it, and people start going out because it's like accumulating a lot of tension. Imagine if you take small kids and he has to be sitting there for 3 hours. This guy is, after 3 hours, he's crazy. It's like he's gonna be wilder than he was before, because it's not possible for a kid to be like that, right? So that's the same thing that is happening. Now, one song goes 2 minutes, 3 minutes. An album has 10 songs, and we listen to them over and over again. We are not understanding, but our brain is going to long sessions of hypnotism, and that's why you see the youth feeling like this. They come, for instance, to an evangelism or a camp out. They are feeling like, yeah, we're gonna change our spiritual life. But this is not gonna last long, because if you stop going to the gym, if you stop moving your body, all your muscles will atrophy. If your brain is being constantly with long sessions of alpha mode, then you will not have the ability. You lose power of will. First, you're being fed carnally, because it's written on top of everything, and misfed or unfed spiritually, because there's no spiritual stimuli. Then you're being constantly hypnotized. You are a living zombie when you are exposed to this. And plus, the hypnotism has on you a good feeling, because it's a relaxing. Imagine you go to those New Age, I'm not recommending, okay? Those New Age sessions, right? Close your eyes. Imagine you are in the field, and all this, you see the sea, and the song is ding, 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 ding. What is really happening is a hypnotism in there. And then, just to finish this part, because I want to go to the spiritual part for us to close, otherwise it will be night here. And I know Titico cannot fall from the window, but still I don't want to push too hard. There was another change, and for me that was a big thing when I understood that. Now, I'm talking to you from the standpoint of somebody that was deceived by this, somebody that was trapped I was a total emotional guy. All I wanted is, fun, excitement, all that had to do with, and I was not noticing that I had an addiction. What happens to your brain is producing chemicals, and you need that doses of chemicals every day, and you need more and more. That's why we are more tolerant to the beat, because once you are chemically addicted to a certain level of the beat, you need more to produce the same effect, and then more and more. That's why society was dragged into, who listened to Elvis like thinking it's a high beat today? But your grandma thought it was very beatful, because for her it was like too far from where she was, right? But for us it's like we are addicted to this level, we go to the next level, okay? What I was going to say was very, very important. So, basically what is happening is we are constantly, what Satan is doing right now is destroying the world's ability to reason, to discern right and wrong, and to have power of will to do what is right. Even if they can see that the frontal lobe is atrophy and it has no power of will. I remember, that's what I was going to say, I was one day sharing with a friend of mine that I was feeling, without strength spiritually, no strength to do anything. And my friend, well, yeah, I understand that. He went home and he said, hey, I know what is happening. You two have issue now, the elevation. And I had my MTV sat here waiting for it to play all day long. So I'm working. The song will start playing, I jump from my seat and start dancing and then go back to work and wait. And he says, while you're waiting, you are consuming all of these songs that are going through. So what is happening is your brain is really overloaded with this. And I didn't have all the notion that I have today, right? But we could understand that something was wrong there, okay? This was the biggest change. Balanced music has emphasis usually on the first tempo. Now, I'm going to make it very simple, not technical, okay? For instance, you sing, coming again, Jesus is coming again. So you see the emphasis in the first tempo. You see? But if you turn this into a beat, you have to switch the emphasis. Instead of being coming again. Now you make it coming again. You see, when you shift the beat, your body response is passive. This is what they use, for instance, in the military. It's like the dynamic in your mind and body is proactive. When you do this, is reactive. If you notice, when people sing hymns with what I call pepper, okay? Once you are addicted to pepper, to spice, you don't want food without spice. I had an aunt that she was into spice, right? She will come to my house, she will bring a little bottle with spice on it because she could not take my food. My food would taste like nothing. I will go to her house, I will bring my little bottle with water because her food, I could not even taste the food. It was just spice. When you get addicted to the beat, all the hymns, they sound like not fun. Well, the hymnal songs, you need to add some pepper on it, right? So the 60s reversed all this, okay? Notice this. All pop music was born from the same cradle as rock music and swing and blues, and they all have the shift on the structure. I'm going to show you, okay? You listen to reggae. You see? The chanting. Rap and hip hop. Romantic music. All of them. You can take whatever you want. This, your body reacts. Look at people in the concert. Look at people in charismatic churches, how they sing hymns. these people, they are just having sugar, spiritual sugar. There will be no protein in that, nothing that will really, they are quick sugars, energized now, go home and have no spiritual strength. So, even if a song has a light beat, I want you to think how serious this is. The most important asset for God and His people is power of will and freedom to choose. If you were accepting Jesus while you were hypnotized by the music, is this a valid conversion? Have you ever stopped to think about that? So I'm like emotionally here. The speaker is like, if you feel the Holy Spirit is talking to you right now, and the song goes, and you're like crying. You're emotionalized, and I'm not saying all emotions are wrong, but when you're driven by emotions, and you're there, you're crying, and you go home and you lack that hype, you have to go back to church next weekend because you want to feel the same. You are addicted to an emotion. Have you ever heard people saying, yeah, and at that moment, we could really feel God there. Oh, He came late to church? Or He was not there from the beginning? Why didn't you feel it? Because you were not having a hype, an emotion, you see? All right, friends, I want to close this with connecting this to final events. So we saw that Satan wanted to defile the sanctuary by bringing pop music into the worship. It is not arguable any longer. If you were an Adventist in the 80s with the celebration movement, you saw the birth of this. But now every church is mainly adopting this, and they are not seeing a problem. Why? Because they were raised in this culture. You know, when my generation, we were kids, the elders and the pastors will say, no pop music in the church. We will not listen to it in the church and go home and listen to our bands and get addicted to that vibe. Now we are the elders, we are the pastors, this is what we are used to, we don't see any problem. I was talking to a guy who was telling me, I think you're a little bit extreme. And I said, why am I extreme? Because if we are balanced with the beat, there's nothing wrong about that. And I said, what is balance? Oh, Jesus. He says, no, that's too much. I said, that's too much for you. And what you listened to was too much for your grandma. Where's the parameter? You see, you cannot go by feelings. I said, I showed you a parameter, physical, mental, and spiritual. If the melody is not what dominates the song, and if the rhythm is the main thing, or if it's a repetitive or hypnotic sound, and by the way, this is not only the drums. New Age music without drums does the same thing. I will show you soon what it is. It's called the mantra. Okay? The mantra is when your brain gets to that stage. We'll talk a little bit about that. Okay? So we know that Satan has this plan. Worship and adoration was his main thing. We know that he weakens the nation. What is happening to society? Have we been weakened by this? He deceived the whole world. Everybody thinks there's no problem. Oh, it doesn't affect me. You know, I just like this. It doesn't, I'm not going to do those things that are saying that. Do you remember the case of Columbine? Those kids were listening to Rammstein. It's a German heavy metal band. They would not speak a word of German. They put the song playing and played the security cameras videos, and these guys are doing exactly what the song is saying, step by step, without understanding a word of German. Music has the ability to overpass your filtering. You are in alpha mode and being assimilating. Many youth, they don't want to be engaged in premarital intimacy, but the point is that their brain is fed with this, and they have no power of will to overcome that. So it creates a contrast between what they want to do and what they can do. So how is defiling it? Changing songs of praise into hatred. Bringing popular music into the temple. All this we saw. But he has a major plan. We saw the history of how he came to this point. And now as you see in the scenario, you see a work. Do you see a work? The discoveries, my opinion, okay, I'm not trying to prove this is a doctrine, was Satan's strategy to reunite the world. God said, spread in Babel. It says, there are guys on the other side. We could connect and the world can be as one. Notice the motivations of those guys was never like, they will say we're going to evangelize that. Yeah, after enslaving them and taking all that they have. Okay? So it's not from God, these motivations. What he was able to do now was this lifetime dream. He was able to convince Christians that that kind of music, if you change the lyrics, doesn't affect you. It's not a problem. You can use that for worship. How do you think Satan will go from, if possible, to deceive the elect? How do you think he will go to the point that Christians will welcome him thinking he is Christ? He has to make Christians shift from a rational worship to an emotional worship, where your senses are benumbed and you can no longer distinguish right and wrong. You feel that you're in the right place, but you're being led. Notice this. Is this a rock concert or a church worship? I'm sorry, my friends. When it comes to the point that you cannot tell God's operation from Satan's operation, you know something is wrong. It cannot be that God operates the same way that Satan operates. Nobody is able to. In fact, I searched for church worship when this image came. But it could be a rock concert. It cannot be. That's why I say to churches where they have all these hype and manifestations that operate exactly like African tribal rituals, cannot be God. Either is God there and is God here, or is not God in any of them. It's not like because they have it African, it's not, and what we have, it's here, it is. No, it is not the way God operates. We don't find any of that in the Bible. Okay? I want us to notice and understand the same thing that is happening in Dura, and we don't have time now, otherwise I will go step by step to show you that the book of Daniel is a parallel for the end times. You know, the time of trouble and everything is represented there. Okay? Ye hear the sound of all kinds of music. What does it mean? International gathering. There's nobody not listening to pop music right now. Even in Africa, the guy with the little radio is listening to pop music. We used to live really in the countryside before we left Portugal. We were still in the countryside, but there was even more. When I would go with my kids to the city, to the mall, they will come all electric, you know, because while we were there in the supermarket or so, they are listening to something they are not used to. And it's a bombardment. You're not even noticing, but you're constantly getting this. It's super overloading. When you listen to that, you fall down and worship the image because the music is benumbing your ability to discern. So Satan's strategy today with pop music is to do exactly the same thing. The image of the beast will lead people. He will give life unto the image, and people have to worship the image or die. What was said to Daniel's friends? Worship or die. The music is the tool that Satan used to benumb their senses there, and is the tool that he's using to benumb the senses of Christians. And I want to bring this to a very serious conclusion because we have some texts that were written in 1910 predicting what is happening now in the church. Mind you, before the 80s and the celebration movement, we have no clue this was going to happen. So I want you to see this. But I want us to understand that all the way things were unbalanced is really creating the mantra. The mantra effect is when your brain needs to reaches that level that it's benumbed. That's what happened when people speak tongues. Is the brain is taken from ecstasy to trance and it's benumbed. And I want you to notice this. New Age songs do the same. Okay? You hear a song. start relaxing, but the song keeps repeating the same. I used to listen to a lot of Enya, and the songs, there's a song, it's even very demonic. One day I started paying attention to the lyrics, and it says, angels answer me. Promises are mine to keep, like making promises to the angels, and she talks about kind of worshiping them and stuff like that. Very, very deep stuff. And the songs will go like, if you hear that, if you listen to that in a dark room, it's a heavy feeling, okay? So, the mantric state is the state where you are no longer processing, and you're now dominated by emotions and by the impressions. And whatever is said then is totally merging into your brain, okay? And all the work is creating under mantric state, because Satan knows that the heart is what? Deceitful above all things. Above all things. So if you want to deceive the elect, you have to shift their worship. Now I want you to, I'm going to close with those sentences, but I want you to grasp this. I know it's been a long journey. Please hang with me. Notice this. Physical, mental, and spiritual. Who should be in control? Spiritual, right? Spirituality should control your mind, and both control your body. If we revert that, then you're driven by emotions. What the movie said, by the way, that's a Aleister Crowley philosophy. Follow your heart. Follow your heart. Oh, if you feel that's the way you feel. If you feel okay about it, it's okay. That's how you feel. It's right saying don't use this, use this. Okay? Is deceitful above everything. Now notice this. Look, melody, harmony, and rhythm interact with spiritual, mental, and physical. Another way to say spiritual is the rational part. Mental is the rational part. Okay? Where do we internalize the truth? The rational part, the spiritual part, and the rational part. Notice what Jesus said to the woman in the well, at the well. True worshipers shall worship in spirit, that's melody, and truth, that's harmony, the mind. Which means that false worshipers, emotions and body. That's the way to be deceived. We should present to God a rational worship. Okay? Now, I close with those sentences. So, since the beginning, that has been the challenge. Can I worship God the way I want or the way He asks? Is the music I like or the music He asks? First, we have to understand that we are sinfully degraded. We don't like good things. If you do what you like, you'll end up how you don't like. You see, sometimes to achieve what you like, you have to do what you don't like. And if we don't understand that, we are destroyed. Okay? I want you to notice the seriousness of these texts. By the coming of Jesus, let no man deceive you, there shall come a falling away first. And we always apply these to the Middle Ages, but Thessalonians is talking to the manifestation of Satan himself. So this is not only the fall away from the Middle Ages, it applies to that, but it's the fall away from the last days. He will exalt himself. Notice this, that he is worshipped, that's his dream since the beginning. He sits in the temple of God. What is the temple of God? It's not only in heaven, it's the churches, right? He will be in the churches. You're going to see this. Showing himself that he is God. He wants to receive adoration. It doesn't matter that you think you are worshiping God. If you are worshiping Him, He is happy. He doesn't mind going with the name of Christ or whatever name. And I could go, if we were talking about media, I will show you how this is played out in the media also, okay? Look at this. This is from Selected Messages. And I would recommend you would read volume 2, pages 31 to 38. Very important. This was the first time that a charismatic movement was attempted to be brought into the church. And the people that went to that camp meeting wrote letters back and forward because they were impressed. And I want you to see what is written here, how this is being fulfilled. When this was written, it was in 1910. There was no dream of what was to come, okay? It says, we are approaching the end. Satan is working as never before. He is striving, look, to act as director of the Christian world. Are Adventists in the Christian world? Do you think Satan will say, I want to conquer all churches, but the Adventists, no. If there are people he wants to, it's us also. He desires to embrace the whole world in a confederacy under the garb of Christianity. If you listen to what some churches are preaching, it's not at all Christianity. Some are preaching mysticism, superstition, prosperity, things that have nothing to do. It's like, put this here, say this thing, and good things will happen. That's superstition. Okay? Use this water like it has a magical power. Things like that. Okay? The garb of Christianity. Look at this. Just before the close of probation. Do you believe we are just before the close of probation? This is what was written in 1910. There will be shouting with drums, music, and dancing. Do you see this in the worships today? Satan will make music a snare. I mean, he has all the tools since the beginning. Look, this was written more than 100 years ago. A high pitch of excitement by the use of musical instruments. I don't know if you have been in some modern worships. This is the exact description, okay? They have never used our own hymnal books. This was the first attempt to bring charismatic movements. By the way, all Christian churches rejected Pentecostalism in the beginning, in the 1900s, when the Azusa movement was happening. And now all Christian churches have embraced the charismatic movement, even the Catholics. And you will see why. Because Satan has been working with the minds. Under the excitement of this strain, there's a bedlam of noise. I'm just reading parts, but I would encourage you to read. Look, the senses become confused, and the satanic agencies blend with the din and noise to have a carnival. And this is termed the Holy Spirit's working. I mean, how can you describe this so many years ago? Look, this is an invention of Satan. It's better to never have music than to do the work which was represented to me would be brought into our camp meetings. Friends, I'm going to share this, and I know this might not be politically correct, but if I know you're heading a road and the bridge has broken, and I just don't want to upset you because you're in a nice journey thinking you will get to, have Thanksgiving with your family, which kind of a person am I? Okay? I believe this. And put this aside, like this is my personal sharing. Okay? One thing is the message, I'm proving things. This is my personal sharing. I believe at this moment, Satan and Christ are in a competition, not started by Christ, church after church. Mm-hmm. Listen to me very seriously, okay? The mark, the signature of Christ, true worshipers will worship in spirit and truth. That's melody and harmony. That's his signature. The signature of Satan, false worshipers that will be deceived, will worship in emotional, response, bodily response, rhythm. This is a personal belief that it is a competition to take over churches. Satan wants to feel that he controls a church. I'm talking about local churches, not denominations. He's controlling a church, and that church is reflecting his kind of worship, which is the counterfeit of Christ's worship. My daughter had a terrible experience once. She was invited to play at an event. I don't know if I should say names here, but it was a big orchestra for the youth. And she was super excited, like, wow, I'm going to play violin with these guys and everything. And then they accepted her, and they sent a list of the songs they were going to play. And then there was a song, I said, I don't know this song. She went and checked, and she noticed that that song was composed by a total charismatic guy, and the original version was a total charismatic thing. And she was like, I don't feel like I should play this. And I said, I think you are having now a test, like Daniel. And she's like, Daddy, I cannot just sit there in the entire orchestra, or if I say no, they might not accept me. So she wrote to the guy and says, well, I don't feel comfortable in playing this. And he says, well, I understand, but we're not going to play his version. He said, well, who inspired that song to him? You see, have you noticed, like, for instance, how people flock to a Michael W. Smith concert from different religions, and there's no different message? How can we, if songs like the prophets are to teach the doctrine, how can we be all singing the same song and we identify as the same doctrine when we are different doctrines? Are you with me? Because this is a unifying, not in Christ, but a brotherhood of man. So my daughter wrote, and the guy was not, yeah, well, we're going to play this, we'll do whatever. If you don't want it, don't play it. And so she had this experience, and this is on TV and everything. She's sitting there playing some songs, and then imagine an entire orchestra, and everybody's playing in the order with your violin down. I felt so sorry for her, but she was strong enough. And she's there. The entire orchestra is playing, and she's there with the violin down. Okay? And the cameras, in fact, throughout the concert, she was on one of the main seats, and they went several times to her, but then they noticed she was not playing. They were always shifting to another place because it was not even looking good. I do believe that there are only two masters in this world, and either you are inspired or controlled by one or by the others. It doesn't make sense that pseudo-Christians are using the same tools, the same methods, the same structure that the world, and just call it Christian music. It cannot be. You cannot, I use this illustration. It's like I have a girlfriend and she comes to me and says, I have a present for you. Okay, thank you. And gives me a teddy bear. I say, oh, thank you. I love teddy bears. Yeah, I know. It says, but it's written here, John, my name is Mark. I said, well, I gave that to my former boyfriend, but as we broke up, he gave me everything back, and I know you like teddy bears. Oh, if this is disturbing, we erase John and write Mark here. This is what we are doing to Christ. You know what? Satan has worn this music a long time. He hates it. He loves it, and he's tired of it. It's worn out. But we're going to change the lyrics and offer to you, Jesus. Plus, it's having a total counter effect in our minds that we cannot be worshiping God fully. We are not in full assessment of this. So, I want you to understand that this is now the personal part that I was saying. I believe that this is a bigger thing than what we think. And either we are subscribing one side or the other. Now, I want to say this. We are not to force anybody into any kind of belief. And if a church wants to go a certain direction, it's their choice. We don't have the truth. And I know I sound a little bit antagonic. We have a perception of the truth. Only God has the truth. So we cannot put our truth as we have to be faithful to our convictions, but we cannot force everybody, okay? Friends, I know it was a long journey. I hope we understand. We talk very much about the mark of the beast, but we don't understand that the mark of the beast is the end of a process, not the beginning of the process, okay? Whatever we are consuming and becoming, whatever is being engraved in our frontal lobe, that's what Satan or Christ will identify as his character and sign underneath. I want to leave a little room for questions because it was a lot of information. I know you will not process all this, and I really was flying through this so that we could cover everything. I'm planning to record this again and with more ease on each thing so that people can watch it and absorb. But still, questions?
So does the example that you were giving earlier about beatboxing, does that count as drums or?
The point here is this. I like it when the Bible talks about the spirit of the law or the letter of the law. Sometimes we like to hold on the letter of the law and say you're technically correct. So I usually use this example. The phone rings. She says, oh no. I go out and I answer, hey John. It says, are you at home? No, I'm not. It's the letter of the law. I'm not at home, but the spirit is of lie. I'm at home. I just came out to pick up your phone call, right? So the point is not the medium you're using, but which effect is it having, okay? So I was immersed into music with rhythm, and that's why I liked to do the beatbox in my spiritual songs. It was an a cappella group, in fact. So it was not like heavy beat. I was not like, it was not like that. It was like we had a song that it had a part that would go, something like that. So the effect that it has on us, a beat, either with the voice, and some voices are really, you cannot tell if it's the voice or if it's the guy, right? The effect that it has on us, a repetitive sound, especially a repetitive beat, puts our brain in alpha mode and hyperstimulates our thalamus and hypothalamus as I said, to make it produce hormones. If the music is romantic, you produce sexual hormones. If it is exciting, you produce adrenaline. Movies do the same. So a beatbox will have the same effect. And it's just a way of approaching. Satan likes to change labels and give you the same thing, but now it's a different label. It's not the same thing, right? Yes. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
We have there, and then we go here.
This is like a two-part question.
Okay.
So, is it true, yes or no, that Seventh-day Adventists, which I am one, we try to stay on the same page?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
So, I'm making a point here. So, and I know it's difficult to answer that because that's like a broad, but I'm trying to make a point. So if we're trying to stay on the same page, but we see something that is not on that page that should be, like music that shouldn't be in a specific place of worship, then how do we get back on the same page?
Okay. Very good question. Okay. And I know what I'm going to say, some people might say, I'm not sure about that. Just think about it. As Adventists, we became an organized institution. And and this was a process that God led. A lot of people were concerned that we're going to become like the papacy or overruling on people, but it's important that we are organized. And God created a system for us that first it was every 4 years, then it became every 5 years. All the churches all over the world, like it happened in Jerusalem in the beginning, they send delegates to a general conference session. Those delegates are to vote prayerfully on all the topics. And most of them were established in the beginning of the church, are the doctrinal points. Now, since the beginning, we saw the need of putting that on paper. So we don't believe in a creed, like for instance, the Catholic Church, the Pope writes a creed and everybody has to abide with that. It comes from top down. In our church, it goes from bottom up. So the one that is, Jesus says that he that leads should be the one to serve. So the ones that really lead the church are the delegates. And we have put all in the form of a manual. Now, why did God inspire us to do that? I want you to notice that every time we have an apostasy, what changes is not what is written. What changes is the behavior of the people. You remember when the king they found the scrolls and they read that to the king, and he tear his clothes. He says, we are so far apart of what is written. We have to go back. This is what revival is. If you take your church manual, which is 160 years of church meetings every 4 or 5 years, and registering who we are as we grow and learn, you will see that there are interesting things written there. For instance, it says that every music that has a connection with jazz, rock, or hybrid forms should not be part of our worship. This is amazing that I had no light upon this, but this is a long time already established in the church. And as I went through a revival, now I want you to understand this. The manual is not what defines the truth. I want to clarify. The manual is just registering our perception of the truth. And all the things that the manual has that doctrinally, they don't use this because we say so. They have like 10 to 15 Bible texts to show how we came to that conclusion. So you read the summary, this is what we believe, and this is why we believe. All the texts that you will find saying that, okay? So the manual is just, because Christians believe different things. So we want everybody to know up front, this is what we believe. If you believe the same way, then this is your church. If you don't believe the same way, we're still friends, but this is our identity. So the way to get back to the same page, there was a time, and some here are Adventists for a while, that you could go wherever you wanted in the world and you'll be at peace. You will find the same identity in every church. But with time, we start in the practice, not the principles, backsliding a little bit, and we should all go back to what is God has guided us. And this is always happening. With Israel, it happened several times, and God would have to bring them back. Our tendency is to, slack a little bit. So it's very simple. Our identity has not changed. One of the things that makes me an Adventist, and when that changed, I will stop being an Adventist. We have never contradicted ourselves in the growth of doctrine, which is for me a sign that God is leading. If God is not leading, you say something and then you change your mind. I don't want to criticize religions. My mom was a Catholic and then became an Adventist. I usually say they give the best Adventists because they are very faithful, very serious, okay? And Catholics, you see the Pope is now saying that he's okay, the transgender world, and because he's adapting to culture. God doesn't change. If it is a principle, it doesn't change. He adapts to things, but not changing the principle. So, our church has grown in learning and understanding the Bible, and we have never contradicted a previous doctrine from what we have understood and established. And if you go, all that the church has always said about music and movies is the same thing. The practice of the people is what has changed. And we have to align to what God is showing us. In the Bible is the same thing. We have to align to the Bible. Sometimes we have to go back to the original point. First love. Did I answer your question?
You did.
So, I do believe that we are seeing now, it's going to get worse, okay? Is the fall away. Fall away, another word for that is apostasy. And I want to leave this little point on this to not cause confusion. A lot of people leave the church because of apostasy. Apostasy is a sign that we are a true church. because it's prophesied for the end times for the true church. Now, apostasy in the principles is not a sign. I'm saying apostasy in the practices of the people. If we were changing the principles, oh, no. But the principles are there. It's just people that are doing different things. Like we have the Constitution in the U.S. A lot of people don't respect the Constitution. But the Constitution is still what proves that we are this solid nation, right? So, we will see it getting worse and people derailing even more. Apostasy doesn't go in the world. Apostasy is only for those that are in the church. The world is already in the world. So when God says in Revelation, come out of it, my people, He's telling us to come out, those that are in Babylon or those that are with Babylonian habits in the church, to revive and go back to the principle. Okay? The pastor that mentored me into pastorship, he said, if you preach what is established in the church, you will never err. You will never err because it is established in the Bible. The church is not the authority. The same pastor, one day he baptized a person that was disfellowshipped by another pastor. And the other pastor wrote him and said, you unauthorized me. And he wrote him back. He says, our authority comes from the Bible. If you act out of the Bible, you have no authority. I could not unauthorize you. It was a strong answer, but it was showing like you cannot just do whatever. We have a principle. Okay? There was a question here. And I will soon release you.
When we up the hand for worship the Lord, is not good?
When we...
Díselo
Okay.
en español.
Cuando
No,
levantamos.
I entendí.
Pero, okay.
Yes, I understood. I want to say something. I don't want to shock anybody with this, okay? There are ways and ways to do the same thing, okay? For instance, the story of the Pharisee and the publican, it's funny to see that the publican is looking up. In our culture, that doesn't sound humble, right? He is like this and looking up to the Lord. Usually when we think somebody is humbling, we imagine like this, right? So, Jesus also, there's moments that Jesus is praying. It says he lifted up his head and his hands and he prayed to God, okay? So, there is nothing wrong about having this action. Although in our culture, usually it's more like this or like this. Now, with the charismatic movement came a habit on this that has to do with New Age thoughts, which is more like an energy flow. You see, it's like you are connecting spiritually. And usually that happens with an emotional connection. People are like alienated, right? I said it right now. Alienated, and they are like getting the energy. It's like Japanese or Asians, they embrace trees because of the energy. So if that is the practice, it has to do with charismatic practices that are spiritualistic. Okay? Now, I'm not saying don't judge anybody. My mom would many times pray like this, and it had nothing to do with spiritualism but you have to ask yourselves why you feel the need of doing that. So if you would see pictures from the Adventist church in the 40s, you will not see anybody like this in the congregation, because this has to do with an entire movement of energy. Again, I'm saying, don't judge anybody just because somebody's doing that. People might have different motives, different understandings, and might be a correct practice. I would say there's not a problem on having some movement like that, because sometimes your body is reflecting what is going on. But if we are always in that mode, and if we are in that mode because of this energy or this emotional connection that is happening, we should ask ourselves, is this clarifying? So many of us, we grew up spiritually, not as kids, but spiritually, in this charismatic environment, and we have adopted some practices that we are not aware. We feel good now when we do them, but we are not aware of what they are really representing. I don't know if anybody here is more than 30 years in church, and you know what I'm talking about. Not only Adventists, all Christian churches, you will not see people like this. You know, many practices that the evangelical world and Christian world has today are New Age. Have you heard people saying you can speak things into reality? This is a New Age philosophy, okay? Oh yeah, but God spoke and everything happens. We are not God. Our word may have a power if it's the word of God in us. What this has to do with materializing things is a superstitious concept. Now, can we believe in things and strive for them with God and make them happen? You know, it's important to believe in things, but this idea that you can do whatever you want, if you believe in it, you can speak things into existence, this is a spiritualistic thought.
Law of attraction.
Thank you. That's in fact the name. And many people are, you know, Oprah talks about that. What is the name of that guy? Joel
Osteen.
Osteen. All these guys. And if you see who they are associated with, the mega charismatic movement. We didn't have mega churches before the charismatic movement. You see, it is something that has come with it. So many things are connected. Again, I have done this in moments, but I am not doing this like I'm connecting to a source. The power is, this is, you know, people in their mind is like they are getting the power. It's like, I can imagine when I see that, I imagine like, you know, thunders coming and the person is feeling energized. That route will be dangerous, okay? Because there's a word for that. When the physical part is not metaphysical, which is a lot in charismatic things. There's this metaphysical belief.
It's called honking. We recycle the energy through your
For
body.
instance,
That's a New Age practice.
yes.
So they say that Buddhists can go without eating because
Yes.
they honk their energy back into themselves.
Yes. So many of those things have to do with philosophies. Again, we might feel comfortable because we got used to some things. And we might feel uncomfortable when we don't do them. Did I answer, sister? If there's still a doubt, you can mention. I don't know who was first.
I just want to quote a scripture. It says, I lift my hands unto
Yes.
thy commandments.
Yes,
I think that's biblical.
it is biblical. If you are lifting your hands in thankfulness, if you're lifting your hands in praise, if you're lifting your hands because you get a source of energy, that's not biblical. You see? Because this is a spiritualistic thing of connecting with the energies from the universe that is not a base in biblical thing. God is not energizing us for being like that. Now, lifting our hands might be a sign of our surrender, of our faithfulness, of our anguish,
Worship.
of our worship, can be. But many of the worships that we see today, people are in this philosophy that has to do with emotional energies. That's the only thing. That's why I say it's not what you do, is how and why you're doing it. Okay? This is the point that I'm emphasizing here. So that's why I'm saying, if you see somebody by your side, you see, one thing is, I'm going to just represent this just to explain. One thing is like, Lord, I need your presence. I need your presence. The other thing is, Lord, I need your presence. Please fill me, power. You see, this is a different approach. They believe that there's a connection with the universe and with the energy of God that is going to come through them. This is what I'm talking about. And probably in previous generations, people will lift their arms not with this thought. But this culture has been changing some of those things. That's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying there's nothing wrong on lifting up our arms. I even started with the example of the publican. He's humbling before God and asking for mercy. Look, I can beg to God like this. God, please help me. I need your help. I'm not connecting with the universe. You see the difference? I hope this is clear. So I'm not saying it's not biblical. I'm just saying depending on how it's done. She was here and then you go.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and wonderful evenings. Yes. Well, I was just wondering, Pastor Spencer, we understand how the devil is working. Music is one of his main tools, undeniably so. But do you ever have any concerns, or do you ever study or teach on something that's traditional that may very well not have been good? In other words, because something may be loud, rhythmic, versus quiet, traditional, how do you even know that the traditional was good to begin with?
Let me see if I understand the question. For instance, you might have a traditional hymn that is also not right.
Exactly. For instance, I'm glad you mentioned the hymns, because that was exactly what comes into my mind. These hymns are so wonderful. But how do you know the spiritual makeup of the hymn writers?
Okay, that is a very good point, and I'm going to touch several pins with this. This is very important. You have to consider several things, okay? There are moments that you don't know the source of the writer. There's the inspiration that created the hymn. Usually there are mistakes in the lyrics. Usually. Okay? But you might not know. Then there's the arrangement. You know, a good hymn might become a bad hymn because of arrangement. Or a bad hymn might become in terms of the influence it has on you, mentally and physically, might become correct because of arrangement. I'm going to give you an example. If I sing, near the cross, na tan tan tan, look, tan 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 tan. All I have to do is to slow this down. Tan 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 tan. You see, the same hymn was okay. Many times to just make a hymn unbalanced, if you speed it up or slow it down, you will require an extra beat, which is a counter beat, and that will unbalance the song. Okay, now I have songs that the original version of the song was not good, but the song was clean. Sometimes a person might have a wrong inspiration or a wrong perception, or even commit a mistake in the inspiration because of the level of knowledge they work. But they are sincere and they are not part of the charismatic movement. Now, let me explain this. We have several hymnals in our hymnal that were written from people from other churches. Their original versions have doctrinal mistakes. Even the other day, inadvertently, I chose one as the opening song for my sermon. And I chose because of the first part. And then as we started singing, I remember, this song, how did I choose it? Because it's in our hymnal, but the lyric says, when I fall upon my knees with my face to the rising sun. The true worship is turning the back to the rising sun. Okay, the person that wrote that didn't have knowledge. The hymnal, I believe the people that prepare our hymnals should have changed that. Probably they didn't notice that detail. So I'm not saying that this hymn is satanic just because this person didn't have knowledge when they wrote the hymn. God uses at the level that we are. Luther, he had prejudice against Jews. He didn't have an understanding of some things. In his mind, Jews were the ones who killed Jesus, and he didn't think. But God used them at the level he was. When I say going to the sources, it's more in the charismatic movement, because the inspiration of many of those authors is spiritualistic. Many of them write their songs under a kind of a spiritual trance, and some of them are emerging problems. Like Michael W. Smith, he has openly expressed his problems with addictions. So you cannot have it both ways, you know. So that's more the danger that I'm talking about, because I believe in the last days Satan will use this spiritualistic, charismatic movement to cause this apostasy. So back to your question. It has to be more of a case by case. For instance, I would have no problem on using a song that was produced by a sincere, known charismatic person from another church that has mistakes in the lyrics, and I can correct the lyrics. The song is clean. Or there's a version that was arranged that is not, the arrangement is not clean, and another version is clean. I want to say something. Brazil is very musical, and I had several problems in preaching this in Brazil. Okay, one of the things they would do, they have the youth CD. Every year they issue a youth CD, and I was there for 5.5 years altogether, and this youth CD was going down and down and down. Every year, the first year you have like 1 or 2 songs with the beat. In the 5th year that I was there, it was like 1 or 2 songs without a beat. And then they will do these, they will issue the same song with 2 versions, one with a beat and another without a beat, so that liberals and conservatives will be okay with that. You see, what is this? You understand? This is not the buffet that we pick what either is correct or is not correct. There are some things that you can have alternatives, but not in everything. So what I'm trying to say, and I'm not criticizing, my goal is for us to revive, okay? What I'm trying to say is that you have to see each case and watch as the source. For instance, I would personally try to avoid songs from, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody with this, but songs from Hillsong, Michael W. Smith, those bands that are all part of a large movement that is the charismatic movement. The source of inspiration, they are being led by what I was saying, Satan trying to take the lead of Christianity and to lead people into an emotional worship. They are part of this mega industry, and you can see some fruits. Was Jesus a commercial ministry? No. These people have commercial ministries. Was Jesus an emotional worship or a rational and truth worship? So when you see some of the signs, Christianity was never popular. If you have mega churches, you should wonder what is attracting the people, right? Of course, Jesus had multitudes, but also they left when he say, this is the thing.
So are you just distinguishing that type of music for the temple or even outside the temple? In other words, like just a month ago, Jeff and I went for a run. He ran half a marathon, I did a quarter, and there's no way I was going to listen to a hymn.
No.
I was listening to
No,
some hip hop and some Christian.
Okay.
You know, I'm telling you.
Okay. All right. I'm glad you are candid about this.
Absolutely.
Let me share some things, okay? I would do exercise and jump rope to the sound of Marilyn Manson, specifically the song "The Beautiful People." Because you're like, ooh, you feel the beat. Studies have shown that rock music and beat give you a hype, but in fact they atrophy the development of your muscles. Okay?
Wow.
Now, it's like coffee. When you drink coffee, you feel like you're like super energized, but coffee was called a stimulant, and now it's called a stimulant depressant. Which happens is that it exhausts all your energies and you feel that hype, but then you're totally out and you need another coffee. What the coffee is doing is getting again all your energies and making you feel that. And so you are being drained out. Now, you might feel a beat when you're running and it gives you that hype. That hype is an emotional feeling. It helps, but it's not a positive thing, because you don't want to care for your body while destroying your mind. So I know it might sound contrasensual, but if you hear calm music, in the long run, you will have more effects. You will not have that feeling, yeah? I remember, I'm sharing also as you shared. One day I decided I was very much into physical exercise. I was doing abdominal, how do you call it? Sit-ups. And started the song, I don't know, Eye of the Tiger. And I decided I'm going to do sit-ups for as long as the song goes. And I was doing it in my bed, on my bed. So it was not just list. I will go really totally down and come up. Man, that song was longer than I. Okay, how are you going to finish up? I would probably not be with the same height if it was a calm song. But my muscles would not be so atrophied, okay? So we have to understand that some of those things are acculturation, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you have to hear to. You can hear to dynamic songs. It doesn't have to be a hymn. There are songs that are. But it's like. You see? Because that beat will not have a positive effect. It will take a while for you to adapt to that because you're used to. I don't take it too strong. When we are addicted to something, we cannot live without it. You see, it doesn't even feel good when we are missing it. But then little by little our body will adapt. So I'm not saying you have to hear a hymn when you do that. I'm not saying it has to be just a meditation song while you're the sea and stuff like that, because that's not what you're doing. That's why I want to say this is very important. In the battles, they will have a drum. The drum is on the first beat, and the idea is to energize. So I want you to understand that there are some drums that are okay. Let me give you an example. There's a song that it's a tan taran tan taran tan taran tan taran, and then he goes to a part that he rolls up and it goes. It's like a march to battle, but he's in the first tempo. He goes. You see, and it's still okay, and he has drums. So I'm not saying, that the usage of drums in some situations, but it's not like an upbeat, repetitive loop. The upbeat is when you go in the, I can't say contratempo.
Yeah,
It's called, in English, it's called upbeat. So you have tan, 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 you do a double. You see? So usually that will have an impact on your brain. I know it sounds awkward, how you're gonna shift this. Especially hip hop and
well,
rap.
I'll make it perfectly clear to everyone in this room. I'm not talking hip hop like P. Diddy. I'm talking Kirk Franklin. I'm just saying.
Kirk Franklin openly saying he's part of the same mega charismatic
I understand,
movement.
but I'm just saying that's what I was using.
Oh, I see. I'm not criticizing. I
That's
compose
what I wasn't doing
Christian
other
rap.
stuff. Right.
I have
There you
composed
go.
that.
Yeah.
And reggae.
And reggae.
In my days of blindness, I thought it was okay. I have a Christian reggae. I have a Christian rap.
Right.
What's the problem of expressing to?
Right.
But you cannot. Let me see if I find an example that I'll give you. I cannot buy a present to honor my wife while flirting with the woman at the store.
Right.
You see, it's a contrasense. You see, you cannot be honoring God while villainizing your body or your mind. Okay, but I'm not criticizing. That was the idea of the lecture, to help us understand. Satan has covered these things with the garb of a Christian message, so it sounds good. You can find, if you go online, you can find an alternative for any worldly song with your Christian lyrics. What is Satan trying to do? is changing the labels, but not changing the content and the effect it has upon you. And this is why I want to say this as a personal testimony. I am a pastor because of this message. That was my experience of conversion. And I have spent my life preaching this. I've been preaching this since 2004. And for me, this is the most important message that our people needs to hear. Not only the music, the entire media industry and the war of the senses. Because what Satan is doing is trying to benumb us for the final battle. Most of those things are things we like. Don't think I don't like those things. I still like the beat. But we cannot do all that we like. I was a beat man, you know. I'm listening to a hymn that is clean, and my wife is like, because I'm already like this on the wheel. You know, on the steering wheel, I'm like, and she's like, this music was clean. There's no, but it was in me. You see? I hope I help in that.
Absolutely.
We have there and then you. Or is just a comment on this? If
just
it's
a
a question,
It's a
okay,
quick question.
then she was first and then you go.
So I have two questions.
Friends, I usually have a practice on this. I don't want you to be held hostages here. But I usually do. I have a closing prayer, and those who want to stay for the questions, they stay. But everybody is feeling like they don't have to stay because the program is not over yet. So if you want to do that, we can do that. I don't want anybody to feel like we have to be here because I'm making it so fast. Go ahead.
So, one question, going back to the example you gave of Martin Luther. So, he had his issues. It wasn't just that he didn't like the Jews, but he did write A Mighty Fortress. And that's like a staple in many
Yes.
churches.
Yes.
So, what about a song from a singer, an artist that we know is probably not in the full truth? And they came out with a song, and the song is not arranged correctly. It has tons of syncopation and stuff. But what if we arrange that song to be appropriate? Would that still be acceptable? Because to me, sometimes I love music. I'm very musical, and like in all aspects. So when I hear a song, I already know what the original one sounded, and I find myself already not enjoying that song. That is a beautiful song, beautiful lyrics. Biblically, it is clean. But the music, the arrangement, at least for me, it's too much. It's a distraction.
Yes.
So sometimes it's not just the instruments, it's also the way people sing it. It's very sensual,
Melisma.
yeah. So one time I heard a song, and they said he was showing me a song that it's a beautiful song, but immediately I was like, it reminds me of this other artist. Like it's very sensual. So is there such a thing as maybe possibly rearranging a song so we can actually play it in the sanctuary as a special music, or should we just kind of not play it?
There are two things to take in consideration with this. First one, before the charismatic movement, okay? So for me, personally, once we are turning into the charismatic movement, that's Satan's signature. Because it has to do with spiritualism and New Age, which is all satanic, okay? So I would put this red flag for, and I'm not saying that everybody in the charismatic movement has to be done. Some might not be aware, but who is inspiring them? But before that, a song that is with problems can be corrected, because if the person is sincerely or even in their truth and mistakes seeking God and composing something that is imperfect, okay? Mind you that all of our songs are imperfect, because we don't have a perfect worship like God received from the angels, okay? Now, there's the first thing. So if it is a charismatic, from the charismatic movement, I will call it like this, the charismatic movement, it will be what will unite all the churches in the community. Because it's an emotional response. They can ignore differences in doctrines because we all feel the same. So it's dangerous. The second aspect to consider is associations, okay? Sometimes we do a song, like for instance, there's a song, I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. it sounds almost like a hymn, and people turn that into hymns to sing in campouts. It's almost impossible not to think in Coca-Cola. So you will have unholy things being brought to your mind when you are singing something. And first, it was dedicated. Satan and Christians believe in dedication. Everybody believes in dedication. It's the bare example. So now, somebody composed something that is dedicated to God with their knowledge, with mistakes and problems because of what they did. They were still inspired by the level of knowledge they had by God. And we can correct and adapt that if that is not associated with the charismatic movement. Because I'm not saying that all there are should be taken out, because we have to see the case, but I will be alert. Or if that is not bringing associations. Many times we take a song that is in the world very well known and we just write a lyrics. I don't think this is a good practice, because they will be, Luther did with songs that were more instrumentals, and now the lyrics will be associated to something, and the song is almost gaining the spirit of the lyrics. Are you with me? But we have to be very careful with that. If it's not bringing associations, it's a good. I have cleansed some songs that had, the original song was good, many arrangements were not good, but you can still sing that song and dedicate it to the Lord. It was dedicated to the Lord. So it has to be a little bit on a case by case, you see? And again, please, to bring peace to everybody. Not to bring relax and condoning to anybody, but peace. God will also take our sincerity in things that we don't know. You know, we worship is like a child drawing, we worship at different levels. What I want you to understand, and this is very important, and sister, I didn't forget you there, but I want you to understand this. Please read in your Bible and study about this. The final work of Satan will be one of counterfeiting Christianity. When Jesus says false Christs will come, there's a guy in Brazil, he's called Henri Christi. He says he's the reincarnation of Christ. And he goes dressing a long robe and beard and stuff. I mean, everybody makes fun. Nobody's really, oh, he's Christ. Christ is not talking about that. Christ is talking about false preachers, people that will misrepresent him, and Christians being eluded by Satan himself. He will pretend to be even Christ. So I do believe the charismatic movement is the birth of this revolution that he's doing and absorbing Christianity, because he has no way to deceive Christians that are worshiping in spirit and in truth. So he's shifting them to an emotion. The worst thing in your life is to trust emotions. The worst thing in your life. Now, I'm not saying despise emotions. We are physical, mental, and spiritual. But you cannot be led by emotions. You see, you have a feeling. If your marriage was based on emotions, you will be doomed. I came to a point in my marriage, 4 years after being married, that our feelings towards each other were gone. Zero between my wife and I. And our marriage was saved by principle. And now I love my wife more than I loved her when I got married.
Amen.
Feelings, one day you might wake up, oh, you're the most beautiful of today. Oh, I'm not into this. You know, that we cannot be guided by feelings, okay? So that's this shift. The charismatic movement for me is Satan's counterfeit of Christ's true worship. And he's trying, like Thessalonians says, trying to take the place of Christ. So that's why we don't want to condone. That's why my daughter took that decision. She didn't want to condone. The song was technically clear, but the source, the inspiration, and what she was feeding was this entire movement that is a pack. You see, it's more like what I'm concerned with, okay? I hope it's making sense. I don't want to be too extensive. I'm late already for too extensive because I know I was.
Real quick,
Yes.
While you were talking to Sylvia, you mentioned sometimes you have to use drums, and I can go back. I may have misunderstood you when you said drums were worldly and then loud cymbals was secular. and melody cymbals were holy.
Okay,
So
very
when
good
you
question.
mentioned that it was,
You have a good question.
Okay,
All the
yeah.
questions were good, but the way you put it is really bringing topics that I'm needing to
because
clarify.
I didn't, yeah.
Okay. First, I explain. Let's put 3 levels here. Okay. Resounding cymbals, loud cymbals, and worldly drums. Okay. If you remember, I explained holy, secular, and
Worldly.
worldly. Yes, holy, secular, and worldly. Okay. So, loud cymbals will not be in the temple because it's holy.
Right.
They will be in some secular things and also in some feasts outside the temple that were holy, but a more general thing. For instance, a loud cymbal was used when they will come or go to battle. In those cases, that is not in the temple, in those days there were not so much the upbeat problem. Like nobody had like something doing like this, like techno. Dance, 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 and that was no such thing. Okay, there was nobody with the drum like that. Crazy. Those usages of drum out of the temple.
You're good at that, by the way.
Thank you. Out of the temple, in the correct tempo, it is correct.
Okay.
Okay? So, like for instance, sorry, those are usages. You will be all medals after you leave this. Did you know why nobody's? Okay, sorry. So I want us to understand that is not what I'm saying. Now, it is a dangerous ground. It is a dangerous ground because when it is in the first beat or the right thing.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your endurance. There is some place, okay? And it took me a while to understand that. It's very rare that we will find a secular application that is not worldly, especially with the drum set. Now, with the isolated drum, yes, but the drum set was designed that it's almost impossible not to use it without an upbeat, unless you subuse the instrument. Because it's prepared to do an upbeat because you play with both parts. If one is stopped, like if I do.
So you're saying you're not taking it out of our lives, but it's not for the temple.
No, I'm sorry. I have to not let that slide like that because we might go into a lot of danger like that.
Oh.
There are very seldom usages, and in the world, in the secular music right now, you won't find drum settings. You barely find drum settings on tracks that are in the correct tempo.
Got it.
Let me explain this. Look, I want you to see my foot.
I'll stand.
Okay, no, I'm gonna do like this. If I do this, you see this is going in the same tempo. If I do this, have you seen, for instance, a double boom? That when you press, the drummer presses and it beats 2. For instance, in the album Elevation, U2 has a song that goes. The guy beats once, he does like this, and the bomb goes twice. You see, all this is upbeats. The upbeat goes between the 2 tempos. So, like, I turned this into a wrong beat. You just see? So it was military beat. Now, if I use the upbeat, it's already the wrong beat. You see, so I would say, be very careful with that. I will use more in a military setting, a march, or a situation like that. Most of the songs we have out there, I gave you an example of a hymn that has a march beat arrangement, putting the emphasis on the hymn, not an upbeat drum set. arrangement. I hope this.
So
was
if she were to give music that you said was okay, that sometimes you have to use a drum, she has to be very specific about what song that is, that's using that beat.
and how the beat is, and make sure you understand. And this is a seldom usage. I will not do that as a practice every day. I would, if I was in her position, I would prefer to use a dynamic song, more melodic,
Okay.
because usually the military beat is not so much for the running. You don't go. You see, so there are some cases like that. Oh no 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 no. This isn't the right beat. Drop 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 drop. Oh no 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 no. It's right beat. You see? But I'm not seeing her running with that.
Right. You can just run to a cadence and you'll be alright.
I'm sorry. I know it sounds not simple. The Lord will lead you there. Okay.
I just understood it because.
Thank you, friends. I know it's long.
Thank you.
There's only so much energy. I should have played it. So.
I was singing in church and I always used to sing in New York as well. And I'm always believe that if there's a